Coming up next, The Crunch with Cam Slater. Conversations with a side of controversy. Every Thursday from 4 p.m, right here on RCR, Reality Check Radio.
Welcome to The Crunch on Reality Check Radio. I'm your host, Cam Slater, and this is the place we crunch the political issues and cut through the politicians' spin. It's been a huge week following the weekend assassination attempt against Donald Trump. David Farrar will be along shortly to discuss this and the latest poll from the Taxpayers Union that covers all of the issues in New Zealand politics as well. Then I'll have a chat with Glen Thurston from Mental Hunts about depression, mental health, and firearms owning. Olivia Pierson will be along too to share Olivia's view with you all, and you'll never guess what that's going to be about. Naturally, we'll hear from Cam's buddies and see what they have to say about the attempted assassination of Donald Trump. And of course, we'll have the whale bag to get your feedback as well. Don't forget to send comments to inbox@realitycheck.radio or text to 2057. John Key once thanked David Farrar for his excellent polling that helped Key win an election. I never bet against David because he always has the data. He's on the line now to discuss the attempted assassination of Donald Trump, what that means for polls, as well as explain the latest Taxpayers Union Courier poll. With me now is David Farrar, probably New Zealand's best pollster, although he'll probably defer to that comment, won't you, David?
I'll let other people describe me. Some say very good things, some say less flattering things.
Well, let me tell you something to the listeners. I never bet against David Farrar's reckons because he's got the numbers.
Well, data helps. Yeah, we all have opinions, but opinions backed on data, tend to be a bit better.
Well, that's the thing. Opinions are like noses. Everybody has one.
Yeah.
So the latest Taxpayers Union Courier poll came out on Friday last week. There's a little bit of coverage in the mainstream media, but there's some quite interesting developments in this poll compared to the last couple, isn't there?
Yeah, but the biggest one is Christopher Luxon's gone up around 10% as preferred PM. I think that's a bit exaggerated. If you look at the poll before, he dropped quite a bit. And so what I think happened is that was probably a bit exaggerated, the drop last time. So he's probably, if you look to 2 months ago, he's up sort of 4% or so. Makes sense in one way, though, because he's been doing the statesman-like stuff overseas, etc. And that's all positive. It's not, doesn't result in negative stories there. So basically it's, government looks like it's getting on and governing. But what was surprised maybe is the Greens are still holding up high. In fact, it's Labour, who's been a bit invisible, has dropped 3%. But the Greens seem to sort of have a brand where we don't care that their last 4 MPs have been bullies or shoplifters or allegedly migrant exploiters. We still like the Greens.
Yeah, it's
Chloe is worth mentioning, is up to 11% preferred PM, which is very high for a third-party leader.
And very high for someone who always just delivers a word soup of nothingness.
I'll give her some credit for the Darlene Tana investigation. I thought her press conference there was pretty strong because she actually said, this is so unacceptable. We feel betrayed. She lied to us. There wasn't sort of, she could have been more weasel words there, but she was pretty clear about the moral condemnation, etc. But yes, look, she's like Jacinda. She's a hero to young women.
Yeah. But this is the interesting thing. The Greens are staying high. They've got Julianne Genter, who's still to go before the Privileges Committee.
Yeah.
Who also has got allegations of assault by shopkeepers have complained about being assaulted by her, actually physical hands-on. They throw Darlene Tana under the bus, but there isn't a peep about Julianne Genter and her behaviour.
No, because Julianne's more valuable to them. In the end, politics is a sort of how bad is it what you've done versus how useful are you to us? When you're a new backbench list MP who's been there a few months and you're getting bad headlines, whoosh, you're gone. When you're the person who's sort of identified most with the public transport policies there, they'll be far more forgiving of what you've done.
Yeah, it's hypocrisy though, isn't it?
Oh, no, yeah, it is, because what Julianne did isn't capital hanging offence, but I always think about what if we reversed it. If a New Zealand national male MP had gone to the other side of the house and shouted and berated Julianne when she was a minister, it could have been the only story for days on end, with people violence and howling. So there is that double standard there.
Yeah, totally. And that's the media's double standard as well.
Yes, very, very much so. And we've even seen this with the Trump shooting. Now, look, I don't think you should be blaming Biden or any Democrat for this, but when Gabby Giffords, a Democratic congresswoman, got shot, everyone piled on to Sarah Palin because she'd done an image showing her a few months earlier as one of the targets for seats they won, with a bullseye around them, etc. And the Democrats had done similar with Trump. They talked about he's a target. We need to make him a bullseye. And I don't think that's inciting violence, but it's the double standard.
Yeah. I mean, Joe Biden put on his Facebook just literally 2 hours before attempted assassination of Trump. Americans want a president, not a dictator. And this seems to be a theme of the democratic process, that they're trying to paint Donald Trump as some kind of Julius Caesar, and therefore justified in eliminating him. You've got, congressmen who said that Trump is a threat to democracy and he needs to be eliminated. Just days ago was saying.
With the Julius Caesar, one of the funnier memes was what someone say Biden press conference where he says, I remember the shooting of Ronald Reagan and of John F. Kennedy and of Julius Caesar.
Well, I was surprised that we didn't see Biden announce that he had just met New Zealand's Prime Minister, Sir Robert Muldoon.
Or Jacinda, you've aged.
Oh, that's a nice haircut you've got there. Yeah. Just astonishing. Anyway, back to the Taxpayers Union poll. We'll talk about the attempted assassination shortly, but back to the Taxpayers Union poll. The headline numbers show an improvement for the government, though, don't they?
Yeah, look, 57 seats, 67, where you need 162 to govern. That's a pretty comfortable margin. It's, in the MMP, you really will get much more than that, except, of course, when there was that Labor landslide, etc. So, that's a pretty comfortable one for them. Still going to come down to results. I think at the end, the last election was a vote for change, and people want to see that change. They want to see a better economy, better public services, etc. But what I saw from that poll was they think the government's starting to get on with it, and they're going to give them a go. Yeah,
I mean, if there is quite a distinct gap between Labor and National that has opened up now, and that's to me, when we're looking at these polls, when National and Labor are very close, then the election's very close. When there is a significant gap there, it's not, those third parties aren't ever going to make that gap up, and especially when the third parties are the lunatics of the Greens and the absolutely insane racists of the Maori Party.
Yeah, I agree with you there. There's two factors. One is, if you're polling in the 20s, you just don't get the moral mandate to form a government, even if technically you can get there on the maths. But the second thing is, I think Labor's biggest problem in the next election will be that the only way it looks like they could form a government would be with both the Greens and the Maori Party. Now, Greens have been outside cabinet in the past. They've not been in cabinet. But Te Pāhi Māori have never been in a position where they actually hold the balance of power, i.e. they can bring the government down. When they were in agreement with John Key's government, he didn't need them. He did it because he thought it would be a nice thing to do. And I think when you do look at how radical and even anti-democratic they have become, there will be increasing pressure on Labour to distance themselves from them come the election. If I was doing National's campaign, I'd very much be saying that that's your weak point that you want to target. Not because they are a party that advocates for Maori, but because they're a party that actually has some extremely bad policies.
Do you think Darlene Tana might walk a jump and call the bluff of the Greens and go to Maori
I
Party?
don't think she's going anywhere. I think she probably would go to Te Pāhi Māori if they would have her, and it would be an interesting sign of how politically smart they are if they took her or not, because they shouldn't. It's one thing to take a former Labour minister who's basically not performing well, who's just walk a jump really for ambition. No great look, but that's okay. But this, taking someone who's been alleged of migrant exploitation would look really bad. So I think Darlene will probably stay an independent.
I think they could sell that to their voters, though, David. I could just imagine it. You'd have John Tamahiri saying, look, we've decided that because of the way Darlene Tana has acted towards Ta'iwi, that we're going to take her on board. And Rāhui Waititi would say, good on you, Darlene. You showed those settlers exactly how they should be treated. And the rhetoric fits.
I think there's a better fit for her, though, when we think about political history. A lot of people have forgotten this, but you won't. I think she'd be better go to the Labour Party, because do you remember when they brought all those young socialists in from around the world to work on their campaign and promised them amazing experiences, etc. But actually they were like being paid below minimum wage, put up into hostile conditions. It was basically migrant exploitation. It
was Matt McCartan's brainchild, wasn't it?
I think you're right. So was that 2014?
Yeah, that was in David Cunliffe, the David Cunliffe election.
Yes, that was Cunliffe 2014, if I recall. I thought it was 17, but no, it must have been 14.
It's 14. Yeah. But it was overrun by Nikki Hager helpfully helping John Key get an increased majority.
Yes, absolutely. Great election.
But so that brings me now to a point where you have people involved in the media wishing for something to happen and having the opposite effect. And we're seeing that in the United States, aren't we? We've got all these media people. I mean, just the other day, there was an article in the Washington Post by a guy, and Matt Taibbi at Racket News has highlighted this. It was a guy called Kagan, I think. He wrote this article basically begging that there was a Hinckley-like person out there who would take action to remove the potential dictator, framing an entire article, 6,000 words, in the Washington Post, basically describing Donald Trump as a Caesar-like dictator who needed to be removed. And then we get an attempted assassination.
Yeah, look, the America, especially the rhetoric there, it's something I'm quite passionate about avoiding in New Zealand because I think it doesn't go anywhere good. You need to be able to say, we think the other side's crap. We think their policies are bad. They don't work. But not that, having them come in will be an existential threat to the country.
Yeah, we have got people that do that in New Zealand, though, don't we? We saw, just after the attempted assassination of Trump, Martin Bradbury from the Daily Blog was ranting and raving that this is now going to enable the MAGA mobs to conduct retribution against Democrats, and all of this highly inflammatory language that was coming from him.
And here's the interesting thing, actually. Was there a single violent protest around the United States in the wake of what was a 1 centimeter, no, quarter of a centimeter gap between assassination? No, there was no violence anywhere. And you do have to say that the worry would be if it had been the other way round, that you might actually have had violent riots, or as the media call them, mainly peaceful, breakout, everywhere. So actually, you can have your views on Trump. Everyone knows I am in long, long way from a Trump fan, but his response has been very conciliatory. It's been calling for unity, etc. The exact opposite of what Martin Bradbury was saying.
Yeah, exactly. And then, Melania Trump came out and put a very personal message, on Instagram as well. There's no calls for retribution. There's no riots in the street because someone tried to assassinate, their team member. So they go and riot and do all these sorts of things. None of that has happened. And in fact, you're starting to see the unraveling of this narrative that the media and the Democrats have built, that MAGA people are mad and they're a threat to democracy. When in actual fact, if you look at all the evidence of the threats to democracy, it comes from the other side.
Yeah, like I think extremists are extremists, and it's a bit interesting, the shooter. Look, there's still stuff to come out because it is possible this guy just picked Trump because he wanted to become famous. He was this is what we know so far. He was bullied at school, etc. And maybe if it wasn't a Trump rally nearby, it would have been his school. I mean, thank goodness only one person other than him was killed there, etc. But we don't actually know what the motivation was yet. But it's changed history. Like, this is a iconic moment. I think because of the visual images where you can actually see the bullet flying past his head. You can see him bloodied in front of the flag, etc. But I guess it's also a bit different, Cam, to other assassination attempts where it's been people in office where that's also incredibly bad. But this, people interpreting this as this is someone trying to take away our right to decide who should be president.
Look, it's huge. I mean, the as you say, the iconic photographs and video of this, Trump speaking, puts his hand to his ear, comes away with blood on it, immediately goes to ground, and then he's standing up defiant, pumping his fist, saying, getting a chant going, USA, USA, and then standing there with the American flag, there, blood all over his face. He's almost like he's saying, if you losers, you missed.
Yeah. He reminds me a bit, and only in this aspect, of Theodore Roosevelt, who, when he was campaigning to be president, was shot actually in the body, but thought, it's not too bad. He was an outdoor huntsman, etc. And he carried on doing his speech for another 90 minutes. And then they had a look and the bullet was so far in, he was like, just leave it there.
I mean, it's tough. Could you imagine? I mean, there's all those memes flying around now, Donald Trump standing defiant up to a bullet, and there's Joe Biden can't cope with stairs.
Yes. Well, look, from Trump, I think sometimes the luckiest person in politics because to have this happen, not that it's lucky to get shot at, don't get me wrong, but the whole focus has been, is Joe Biden too feeble, too weak? And people have made the case, Trump's only 3 years younger and he says some stupid stuff, when he does speeches too. But at the end of the day, their hill gets blown away. That's not meant to be a pun, by the fact you have that presence of mind to shake your fist and not be fearful for your life after a bullet's actually taken part of your ear off, as against what's been seen to someone who looked like a half-animated corpse during a debate.
I mean, that's exactly what we're seeing. We're seeing Joe Biden, who is completely feeble, diminished. He appears weak, and there's this fist-pumping Trump in stark contrast with, in front of mobs, almost throwing off his Secret Service detail. It was almost like, the cartoonish person who's being wrestled to the ground with superhuman power throws them away and pumps his fist in the air. Yeah, I can't be taken out. That's what he's saying, and that's what it looks like.
Yeah, it was. I don't think you could have stage managed it. No, I'm not saying it was stage managed. There. It was something that I've been reflecting on for the last 24 hours because, you don't realize quite what an iconic moment of history you're living through is if the wind had been slightly different and had killed him, what would have happened to the country there? And it's not, I would have thought in that case that he would probably be replaced by his son, Donald Jr., who would probably be far more vengeful than people say Trump Sr. is.
Yeah.
Biden would probably not stand because he says the only reason he's standing was to stop Trump. And it would be fascinating if then, this is a what-if scenario, but if Gavin Newsom had become the Democratic candidate, because, of course, his ex-wife or girlfriend is now married to Donald Trump Jr., so you'd have the two candidates for president having been partners with the same woman. Now, that didn't happen, but, if it had killed him, I think it would have been incredibly dark a turn of events for the US.
I think so. But in all of this moment, this iconic moment, we're seeing the US media beclown themselves. Because there was CNN ran a headline that Trump had stumbled on stage and the Secret Service had taken him off stage.
And this is where the satire sites become so good because you've had parody CNN headlines about Trump stumbles, grazes, bullet with head.
Yeah. Exactly. I'm waiting now for the media to come out and say Trump brought this on himself. But we've already seen some Democratic senators making those sorts of claims. We've had one Democratic congressman who's had to fire a staff member who tweeted that hope that the next time the shooter gets
doesn't miss, better aim,
coaching so that they don't miss. Like are they that tone deaf to the, or are they actually just saying out loud what is said behind closed doors in Democratic offices?
I think that's probably thinking out loud, yes.
Yeah, in which case there is a real problem in US politics where you've got one side of the equation who wants the other side dead, literally.
Yeah, and look, as I've said, I'm not a Trump fan. I think he's unfit to be president anyway, but also, that's just my view as a New Zealander, the way to stop Trump if you don't like him is not to vote for him and to vote for someone else. And not to think that this is something which justifies violence, because we've seen that where someone shot up 4 or 5 Republican congressmen, I think, at was it baseball game, Cam? Yeah,
it was. Yeah, they shot them up at the baseball game because they didn't agree with them. We don't need that sort of nonsense. You should. This is what I've been saying on this show since I started it. We need to have discourse, and it might be uncomfortable and it might be annoying, and you might not agree with what the other person says. But we can't all agree on everything.
No,
but we have to respect the right of people to be able to express their feelings that they disagree with that.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's why. I think there is a push that way. There's been the cancel culture, and now there's hopefully what we're seeing is a sort of pro-free speech push. Because in the end, being able to disagree publicly, that stops it getting bad.
Yeah, absolutely stops it getting bad. Now let's just park US politics for a while. I mean, I'm looking at what Nate Silver's saying. What was he saying? 65% a couple of weeks ago after the debate that he thinks that Trump will win. That's got to be up to 75% now, isn't it?
Yeah, well, that's pretty close to where the prediction markets and the odds are too. And instinctively, it probably feels right. And as we're saying, look, 1 in 4 chance that Biden or whoever replaces Biden comes through is pretty significant still. But, it's pretty hard to see the path, because not only does Trump have a massive lead now in the Arizona, Georgia, Nevada type states, and a more modest lead in the Rust Belt, but there's some talk that states like Maine and even New York are coming into play. And it's not that Trump will necessarily win them, but if the Democrats have to start spending money in those states, they're going to have less money to spend in the other states. And this is how you'll win. It's actually forcing the other side to spend less effectively.
I was just thinking about that exactly. The having to spend money in New York would really annoy the Democrats significantly, even in New Jersey. If they're spending money there, that is called shoring up the base in common parlance, right? That's trying
also, how much do they spend on the presidency, or do they think that's bad use of money and spend it on shoring up competitive House and Senate races?
Yeah, and they look at saving the republic by trying to get a majority in the House or in the Senate to stop Trump. That because it's obvious to them that their candidate's not going to get there in the presidency. But American politics is funny. If your lead person isn't performing, that does significantly affect the down ticket.
Well, this is why so many come out to say Biden should withdraw. And if the assassination attempt hadn't happened, I wouldn't have been surprised if more had come out in the next week or so, because they're running out of time. The reports are that Obama and Pelosi are quietly trying to nudge them out. It may be that what's happened, though, may stop that purely on the basis of, if you now think there's no way we can win, then you're probably better to stay with the incumbent and keep people fresh for next time than send someone in for what's going to be a pretty difficult task.
But Trump will be thinking of the future. I mean, he's one of those guys that thinks further ahead than just one term. He'll be thinking that I need to choose the right person for my vice president so that they can carry on the legacy after I finish my statutory 2-term limit.
Yeah, and they're saying J.D. Vance is the front runner, but we'll find out, because, of course, Trump is a consummate showman, is going to have it announced at the convention. They've kept it very tight. And, of course, the convention's going to be quite different theatrics now, too. They're always theatrics, but having survived this assassination attempt, there's only going to be one focus. Yeah, and that's going to be Trump.
Well, but he's going to milk this. I mean, he will. I mean, I would, if it was me. The next thing that'll happen is he'll go to the funeral of the guy that was killed, who was a former fire chief in that town, who literally threw himself in the way of the bullets to protect his daughter. So I can see Trump turning up to that funeral easily.
Yeah, I think it's very likely, because I'm not sure how much you follow things on Twitter, but there's a Twitter account called Cat Turd, and you might think, what sort of account is Cat Turd? Well, it's probably the most popular pro-Trump account on Twitter. It's got millions of people. I'm not even sure if we know who's behind it, but quite moving is that he, and as he had said yesterday, what are you all up to? And one of the replies came from this guy who got killed, saying, off to the Trump rally with my daughter. And so that's made it very poignant, because this was someone who was interacting with people in Trump world, etc. So and also we putting aside that part, it's terrible that someone, attending a political rally should end up dead. And of course, there's going to be investigation into how the Secret Service, allowed the guy to get so close.
Yeah. I'm still just perplexed at the media portrayal of all of this. You've got Stephanopoulos and Raddatz blaming Trump for contributing to violent rhetoric. The violent rhetoric has been coming from Democrats. And this is the logical conclusion of this. I mean, if they can hurl accusations at Sarah Palin for a map that had crosshairs on various places they were targeting for winning in polls, then why can't they do the same here for the clear things that Biden has said, when he says he needs to be in the bullseye?
It's a double standard.
Yeah, it's a double standard. But the media are just pushing this narrative. But I'll just
that doesn't matter now.
To account and just outing Democratic staffers.
Yes.
About all of these people. Well, this is the one that said, I don't condone violence, but please get you some shooting lessons so you don't miss next time. That was a Democratic staffer. Ironically, of the same Democratic representative that tried to pass a bill in the House to say that convicted felons don't deserve to have
Secret Service
protection. Hello.
Yeah, and this is why there's going to be blowback for things like that. There's going to be the investigation into the Secret Service response, plus the motives of the shooter. So that means this isn't a 1 day or even a 1 week issue. It's going to carry on, for some time.
Which is going to make it even harder for Biden. He's not going to get a word in edgeways, anymore. You're going to have Trump, who's probably on the phone to Winston asking if he's got Chumbawamba's contact details so he can use their song for him, because it's more appropriate than Biden, who used it at a stump speech the next day after he failed so dismally in the debate.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think we've talked about polls. We've talked about the US. It's all very interesting, David, but you're a busy man, so I better let you get back to the school holidays and your kids.
That sounds great. Thanks, Cam.
Okay, thanks, David. There's some really good insights from David Farrar there. He always has the data, so he can argue his point from the certainty of that data. Never bet against him, that's for sure. He knows more than most, and that's why he's here on The Crunch. What do you think? Email inbox at realitycheck.radio or text to 2057.
Are you on the RCR mailing list? Never miss a beat of the news and hard-hitting stories you've come to know and love. Stay in the loop. Visit realitycheck.radio/email.
You're listening to The Crunch with Cam Slater, right here on RCR, Reality Check Radio.
Glen Thurston has established Mental Hunts that aims to help people understand the importance of looking after mental health in the hunting community. It's a sensitive subject, one I'm all too familiar with. So let's talk mental health, guns, and helping each other. Glen is with me now. Welcome to the show, Glen.
Thanks, Cam. Thanks for having me.
Now, I was talking last week with Hugh Devereux-Mack from Colfo, and one area that we didn't really touch on a lot, and while we were talking about changes to firearms laws and all the unnecessary burden that is being placed on firearms owners by police and legislation, was the mental health aspect. Hugh suggested you're probably the best person to talk about this. I've got a few things that I can share as well about how I've had interactions with the police around mental health. And then we can let people know that it's annoying, but there's a pathway through.
There is, yeah. I guess you said I'm an expert, and I'm an expert through being
an expert in real life is what. I mean, I've read your story. You've had a terrible experience, and you decided to do something about it. So why don't we start there, right? Let's explore a little bit about your history and where you've ended up with having mental hunts and what drove you to that.
Rightio. Yeah, I guess if we go way, way back when I was about 18, and this is real quick, shortened version of everything, but when I was 18, I had a really drunken episode. I drank heavily as a young fella and ended up in hospital after an attempt on my life. Life moved forward, and this is, like I say, a very shortened version. I got on with it. A few years later, met my now wife, who we've been married 20 years, had some great times. But through that time, I never really got the help I needed. Back when I was I'm 45 now, so back when I was 18, it was never talked about. Move on, get on with life, whatever.
Harden up.
Yeah. And then, so I just lived with those demons my whole life, not knowing really what to do because it wasn't spoken about. So, and then fast forward now to 2016. I had a business here in Wanaka and life was getting stressful. I was drinking heavily. I'd always been drinking, but I just was drinking more than normal. Alcohol became quite a big burden on my life. Every time I drank, these demons would come, the stress of work, everything. And I had this one night and life nearly got the better of me again. And that was it. I said to my wife, I've got to do something about this. I can't do this anymore. I can't live with this shit. I can't live with what's going through my head. So I went to the GP and sought the help that I needed finally. It was the hardest decision I'd ever had to make in my life. I didn't really know what was going on. I just knew something wasn't right. So I went to the doctor. Things were awesome. She was amazing. My GP referred me to brief intervention, and the lady I dealt with in there was really good. Talked about medication, which I'd been anti my whole life because, taking drugs and drinking alcohol, I know everything about the medical profession. So, no. But in the end, I said, look, just give me whatever. I've got to stop these bad thoughts. Nearly ended my life twice, and I don't want to die. I just don't want these thoughts. I don't want to feel like this. I don't want stresses to get hold of me. Anyway, went through that whole process. I can't remember how many sessions I had with her. It was way more than the government was allowing per person. And I got on with my life. I got some great tools. Things were awesome. At that time, I got on medication. I also gave up alcohol. So I'm now nearly 7.5 years sober. And about 4 years on, 2019, 3 years on, I decided I wanted to go back to the doctor and have a chat to the GP because I just had this feeling that giving up alcohol was all I needed to do. I didn't need to get on the medication because it all happened at once. I was like, what actually is helping me? Because things were good. Is it the medication? Is it the tools I've been given? Or is it the fact that I'm not drinking? So I went back to the GP and had a chat with her and we worked through a process. She goes, the only way we're going to find out is if we go off these things. So we went off them over a period of about 3 months. I weaned off them, did everything correctly.
Hey, so it's hard work, isn't it, coming off those things?
It is, yeah. Well, it was actually quite easy and things were great until about 3 months in when I'd sort of got off them and then the demons started again. And it was like I was working on a farm at the time, and I actually personally love working on that farm. And the whole time I was there, and all of a sudden I didn't enjoy work. I didn't want to get out of bed, and everything was just distorted again. And I could see it. I saw it coming, and I was like, nah, this is not good. I tried to fight it for a little bit. I was like, nah. I said to my wife, look, I got to go back and find out more about this medication and just get back on it. So if I'm going to be on it, I want to know what I'm doing. So I went back to the doctor, pretty coherent and everything's sweet. I was having a bit of a shit hiccup in life. Went back and told her what was going on. And she said, look, we'll put you back on the medication. At least now we know. But how about I refer you to mental health services just to get you through this hiccup, I said, sweet, no, that'd be awesome, because obviously the previous time I had an amazing experience. Anyway, a few days later, I had this appointment with the nurse of mental health services, and within the first 10 minutes, he was asking a few questions, and he says, are you suicidal? I said, well, yes. I've been suicidal pretty much my whole life. It's just demons I've been fighting forever. It's just there. And then he says, do you have a firearms license? Almost in the same sentence. And I'm like, what? I said, nah. And I sort of all of a sudden just clicked. And I was like, what? No, this is not what I'm here for. This is not what it's irrelevant. It doesn't matter about my firearms. He's like, well, I'm legally obliged to ask this by law, rah. And I'm like, what? And then it all sort of clicked with 2009, the March massacre and all that sort of thing. And I was like, oh, no. I said, nah, I'm not doing this. This is not what I came in here for. This is purely just a get me back on track meeting. And I actually ended up walking out of the meeting and I said to him, I'm going down to the police station now. There's no way no one's taking my guns. I need my guns for work. I enjoy taking my kids hunting. no way. Anyway, he packed up as well and he followed me. He come down to the police station with me. It was a bit of a random scenario. And next minute we're in talking with the constable there, and sure enough, they said, yep, we have to act on this and we need to take your firearms based on what he's told us. And I'm like, what the hell's going on here?
It pushed you over the edge into another depressive episode. Thanks very much.
100%. It put me in the worst position. The worst part was, like, I said to him, look, it's school holidays. My kids are home. Can we do it tomorrow? They're back to school. No, we've got to act now. I said, but I'm not a threat. I said, I've got things to do in town. And then I've got to then I'll head back out later. They said, oh, well, let us know when you're heading home. Anyway, they waited on the side of the road for me before I had, and as I pulled out, they followed me back home, and they were right behind me when I got home, in front of my family, in front of my kids. Went in and obviously took all my firearms, right down to counted every single bullet that I had in my 22 big Tupperware container, and all my rifles, all my cartridges. It was just like, what the hell just happened? I just went in to see my doctor and get back on my meds, and now I'm getting treated like I've just robbed the local dairy. Like, holy crap. It was horrible. And seriously, when they walked away and I had to somehow explain some shit to my kids and just go what was going on, made up some bullshit story, because I hadn't at that time spoken to the girls about it. I've got 3 daughters. I hadn't really spoken to them about what was going on with me. They were just a bit younger at that time. And then they left, and I'm just sitting there going, I'm a criminal. I'm sitting here. I felt like shit.
They've treated you like a criminal, when in actual fact, you're a law-abiding firearms owner who put his hand up and said, I need some help.
Yeah, and like I've just wrote recently in a post, that makes me fit and proper, does it not? I'm looking after my well-being. I don't know where this becomes an issue, all because of all these crazy idiots that go and do this stupid shit. They go to court and then they scream mental illness, whether they've got one or not. So all of a sudden, anyone with a mental illness is treated like these idiots.
You're like me. You see Golriz Garriman on the TV going, I did it. I stole things because I was mentally ill. And you're sitting there thinking, well, I haven't stolen anything.
Yeah, exactly. And I am mentally ill.
I mean, I've fought depression all my life as well. And, people in my family don't really understand it. I've never actually had any suicidal thoughts, but depression affects people in different ways, and particularly blokes. Like most women who suffer depression have the flight mechanism, right? When I first got diagnosed was actually after an episode where I got incredibly violent and beat some kid up who had let off a firework that had exploded near my son. And that's when I realized I needed help. I went to the doctor, wonderful doctor in Howick that I went and saw. And he said, mate, you've got depression. I said, well, I don't feel sad. I just feel angry. And he said to me, well, you need to understand that you've got this little lizard brain in the middle of your brain, and that controls everything when you are in a heightened state of awareness. And most blokes have fight rather than flight. They want to kill everything that's moving around them. Everything's a threat, and so you're really tense, and you've got all your blood's flowing to your extremities, so you can run or fight or do whatever to survive. It's a natural instinct. It wasn't until I actually saw a psychologist. He said, "Well, I was put on tablets, and I never liked them. I still don't like them." It was a psychologist who said to me, "Well, this is how your brain works. It's in this little amygdala part that's in your brain. It's on or off." Yes or no, fight or flight, and in some cases can be freeze. So some people, when they're in a stressful situation, they just freeze. They can't move. It's what like a rabbit does, right? You're a hunter, so you can be walking through a paddock. You think there's nothing here, and all of a sudden this rabbit jumps out from under your feet and takes off. That's how depression works. It wasn't until I came to renew my firearms license that I encountered the same problems that you had. And I had this arms officer who decided to make life very difficult for me and said, right, and I was honest on the forms. Yep. Do you suffer depression? Yes. Do you take medication? Yes. Well, that was, 3 months of hell unleashed right there just by ticking those boxes. You're being honest. And then he says to me, oh, you need to go and see a forensic psychologist to give an approval to have a firearms license. I couldn't get to see one for 3 months, and it cost $1,200.
Meanwhile, there's someone that really is in a dire straight situation, is on a waiting list to get in, that probably needs the help, whereas you're just trying to, you're wasting the system's resources.
Exactly. So I went to this clinical psychologist and he said, well, why do you need firearms? It's not that I need them. I want them. I get pleasure out of them. I collect them. I've got a collection of this and that, and I also hunt. He said, well, how do you feel when you're hunting? I said, I feel fantastic. Out in the bush, or with my kids, experiencing nature, being real. It's not the bullshit world that I live in politics.
Yeah, exactly. You get to shut out from...
your phone doesn't work. It doesn't ring. No one can bother you, and you're reliant on your wits and everything else. And he signed it off and said taking away his guns would send him into a severe depressive episode. Don't do that. And so that's how I got around. But it cost me $1,200. Now, a lot of people don't have that money to do that. Or know that that's what you can go and do and get a psychologist to sign it off. But it does cost you.
Yeah, there is a process. But the thing is, back when I did it, it was back in 2009, and this was pre-Firearm Safety Authority. So there's a big difference now, and still yet to hear any bad stories yet. But what was happening?
I've heard some bad stories. I mean, I'm a member of Antique Arms.
Yeah.
But, our guys collect machine guns and submachine guns and mortars and things like that, right? Big stuff. We've got guys in our club that have come to the executive or the president and said, look, I don't know how to answer this. I've ticked this box and now I've been referred back to my GP. What do I have to get the GP to say? And they're actually frightened, and they've been put into this state of frightenedness by the new Firearm Safety Authority, which seems to only work to protect criminals, but that's another matter.
Yeah, I guess the biggest problem is there's a lot of inconsistency, and it also, I know the Firearm Safety Authority have the end decision, but here's this person, like even if it happened to me now, here's any person goes to the doctor for help, and then they've got a massive war against paperwork and authorities just for something simple like going hunting with your kids. And it just...
Which will help their mental health.
Yeah, and regardless of, okay, say that all of a sudden we flicked a button and it was all fixed tomorrow and nothing was going to, they'd sorted out a problem, and there's still going to be this barrier that's going to take years to fix. But at the moment, there's 230,000 license holders that are potentially scared to go get help. So give it 5-10 years when all this mental health issues that they've probably just little depressive disorders, nothing major, turn into a major depressive situation, we're going to have a massive mental health crisis, and it's going to have nothing to do with them having a gun. It's the fact that they haven't gone and got help. It was a rare situation for me because it was really early in the piece, and then I actually got asked, I had to have an interview with the inspector in Queenstown and talk to him. I had 15 minutes with this guy. I won't talk names. Anyway, he said, I'll get back to you. Within 2 weeks, he got back to me and said, I've made the decision, and and this is with all the assessments from the psychologist, with the GP saying you're fit and proper. He decided and overruled all that and said, no, I'm not going to let you have it. I basically found out a bit later down the track that he'd had a situation where someone did take their life and he hadn't taken their gun. So it was becoming a bit of a personal thing for him. So all these situations with GPs, whether they're anti-guns, whether the police have had a situation, it's coming down to one person's opinion, which is wrong. It shouldn't be based on people's opinion. It needs to be...
Should be the assessment of experts. If a psychologist and a GP says you're fit and proper to hold a firearms license, it shouldn't be up to Inspector, Dobby to come up, who's got a personal axe to grind, to make a decision that says no.
Yeah, and fortunately that's gone now, because that was based around, I've heard people from different police departments having different situations. There was absolutely no consistency. Every story had a different twist to it, and it was really bad. And the reason I started up doing all this and advocating and trying to find some answers is because it was getting out of hand, and it was going to become a real major issue in the firearms community if we didn't deal to it. So I started making phone calls, and it wasn't until I actually got hold of Kendra Hill and the Firearms Safety Authority, and we started breaking it down, and they've started creating changes. And they're held to what the government decide. Like, they're just the regulators. They don't actually make the rules. They've just got to enforce it. And yes, they're part of the police at the moment, but Nicole McKee I was talking with her, and they're working on trying to break that away. It's a bit like the road, the traffic stuff. We've got the police that regulate it, but the road transport that regulate it. But then you've got the police that enforce it. It's going to be a similar sort of situation, hopefully, if that goes through, which I think is a good thing, to get away from the police running it and ruling it and managing it. And they've got enough things to do. They just need to do their enforcing job and leave the regulating up to regulators. But the regulation needs to be more consistent. So mental health is, as you know, it's got a million branches. We say one word, mental health, but it actually, what are we actually talking about? What category are you putting us under? There's so many different levels of it. Hey, look, if someone's really not well and they're in a really suicidal and they're making really bad decisions and they're talking really bad things, yeah, take their guns. I'm all for it. And there needs to be some sort of rules. But the average Joe like myself that just went in to get back on his medication, what a load of crap. I do want to emphasize.
If you look at what the police are, they say, they're concerned about suicide. If you're going to kill yourself, you don't. There's plenty of people who kill themselves every year without firearms.
100%.
A lot of them are vehicles, single driver vehicle incidents. Do they take cars off people because they've got mental health issues? No. You
do a quick search online and you start finding all the data around all this.
There is no data.
There's 60% of suicides are by hangings. 10% are firearms and explosives. So why can we all, at the age of 3 right through to whatever, end of your life, you can go into the hardware store and buy yourself a piece of rope, no hassles at all. Why are we not legislating rope? That's actually what's killing more people by suicide than at firearms.
Well, that's right. I mean, you look up the numbers, even just deaths by firearm. Let's say the police are saying it's not just suicide. We're worried that people are going to go out and kill other people because they're depressed. Well, okay. Well, in 2022, there was 11 deaths, manslaughter or murder from firearms. And in the year before that, in 2021, it was 10. So we're not talking huge numbers here. When you've got a road death toll that's measured in hundreds, and you've got the police focusing in minute detail on 230,000 firearms owners, and in case 10 of them go out and kill somebody or themselves, you've got to question your priorities here.
Yeah,
really.
Ever since they brought in that lock cabinet legislation, I can't even remember when it was, back in, was it 90, 96 or something? Anyway, ever since then, that has actually slowed down the suicide rate because it's just made it a bit harder for everyone to go and get their rifle if they're in a bad state. And, most people are in the middle of the night, they're drunk, they're on drugs or whatever they are, and then they make a stupid decision and shit happens. If it's a little bit harder for them to get in their cabinet to get their rifle, it's going to be harder. So ever since that legislation, the suicide by firearms has actually decreased. And if you look at the data, and I've looked at a thesis not long ago, it's actually still decreasing, very minimal, but it's decreasing. It's going in a good direction. And yet we've thrown in this massive panic attack purely because the government was not doing their job, and they've turned it into it's the firearms owners' fault. So now we've got this legislation that's been brought in, which is completely unnecessary. Everything was ticking along nice. People were getting the help they needed. And now we've got 230,000 license holders that aren't going to get help because the word's out. There were people, like I say, I started this because people were starting to talk bad on social media. And I thought, well, you doing that is actually creating the problem. So it's taken me about 5 years to pick through how I was a bit nervous about actually making noise about it because I was nervous I was going to actually add to the stigma of it, but I've been very fortunate in the way that the media have picked it up, and it's become a positive thing for firearms holders, and people are realizing, shit, this is actually not just firearms and guns kill. This is actually creating a mental health issue for the country if not dealt with properly. yes, there's got to be rules. Yes, people need to have their firearms taken off them if they're not well. But farmers, you go and get done drink driving 2 or 3 times, you can still get your license back for work. And yet, if you're a farmer and you have your gun taken off you, that's it. You can't even do your job. So why can't we have?
You can't go out and put a horse with a broken leg down because you're the only guy on the farm who had the firearms license. And guess what? The police took it last week. So now you've got a horse that's in pain.
I was farming. I was farming at High Country Farm at the time when this happened to me, and it was a massive burden for me. We also had a small block in town, and I managed some deer in there. And I'd have to ring my boss up and say, "Hey, I've got to euthanize this bloody deer that's got yonies. We need to get rid of it. I can't do anything about it because I wasn't allowed to carry a gun. I wasn't allowed near a gun. He'd have to come in and shoot it." And it was such a burden. It was like a half an hour drive in from the farm at town. It really started affecting me at work. I said to the police officer, I said, "You try euthanizing a cow with a hammer." It doesn't work, eh?
Yeah. You can't really do it with a 22 either, unless you know what you're doing. I mean, cow skulls are bloody hard.
Yeah. But having a license revoked, I technically had to leave the farm so Willie could come in and shoot that deer. I can't be around a firearm. I can't even be next to someone with a firearm when you have your license revoked. This is what I mean. I was way more of a criminal, all because I went and got help. This is the revocation.
And then also you're stigmatized now in the system.
Yeah.
If you go to apply to get your firearms license now, one of the questions is, have you ever had your firearms license revoked?
And I have to be transparent and say all the right things.
Yes, and then they go, "Oh no, that'll be no for you." Then it's automatic stop. That's it, right?
And another point to make about all this is, it was about 2 months earlier. I had just renewed my license for another 10 years. I'd just gone through the vetting process. I'd gone through everything and got my license in the mail, paid all my money.
Yep.
And then they just took it. Didn't get reimbursed, didn't get nothing. It's like, well, why did I get through that? And yet I'd been through all that other stuff.
And you went through that, right?
Yeah.
And filled out all the paperwork. You would have been honest in there as well, and they already knew all of this stuff when you applied and renewed, right?
There was a question he asked. He goes, "There's one thing here that's red flagging you." 9 years ago, so I'd already had my license for 1 year at that time. 9 years ago, I had a drunken episode at a bar and got in a fight. I ended up at the police station trying to get it sorted, and apparently the police wrote that I was in a very mentally unstable state. Yeah, I was as pissed as shit, and I'd just been beaten up. Yeah. I was angry, and I was trying to get to the bottom of what had just happened. So they brought that up, and I was just like, well, firstly, I've given up booze. I don't drink anymore, so there's the biggest problem. Gone. And he's like, okay. I said, okay, well, that's a problem. That was 9 years ago. Why did the cop never come and knock on my door and ask how I'm going? No one ever checked in on me. If he really gives a shit and it's a red flag and he's worried about me, why is he bringing it up 9 years later? It's like...
But isn't this the problem with the interactions with the police being they make the rules, they enforce the rules, and they prosecute you as well.
Yeah,
and handle the investigation. They're doing absolutely everything. They're actually the judge, the jury, and the executioner in all of these things. There doesn't seem to be any sort of sanity check, excuse the pun, but there seems to be a sanity check here. And it's no different with the way they've set up the Firearms Safety Authority. Right? They've actually set that up as a business unit inside the police, which is not what the review said. The review said that it needed to be external to the police. Well, that's happening now because of the election. But you have this situation where the police are in control of absolutely everything. If you're a firearms owner, can come around, knock on your door, take your guns, do all these sorts of things. And there's almost no recourse for anything.
No.
It's very hard to deal with an intransigent bunch of people that have decided that everyone who has a firearms license is a potential criminal, and therefore every interaction that they have with those people, us, is that you feel like you're being treated as a criminal. Every aspect, from the moment they knock on the door to the moment they ring you, or whatever, you feel like whatever you say is going to be used against you. So then you say nothing. And from a mental health aspect, that's an appalling situation to be in. There are no checks. You know?
Yeah, and to the average person, it probably seems harmless enough. But like I keep saying, let's give it 5-10 years, and you think the mental health crisis is bad now. You think the suicide rate in the farming community is bad now. If they don't get treated because they need a bit of help, here we are in one sentence saying, go get help, go get help, go get help. But we're going to take the one tool you need for your job away from you, and the one thing that brings you joy with your family and your kids. No one's going to get help. And then all of a sudden we've got this massive crisis, which I just, like I said.
It's even worse than that, though, you know, because some of the medications that you prescribe to deal with depression, if you bother to look at the contraindications in them, the side effects in them, right? There's one medication, mirtazapine. It's regularly prescribed to people for depression. Right? A little pink tablet that you take each night, and you can't get more than a month's supply from normally your doctor or your GP will give you a 3 months prescription and you renew them every 3 months. Not with mirtazapine. It's 30 days. You know why it's 30 days? Because then you don't have enough to kill yourself. Right? Because that is the major side effect of that depression medication, is that people want to kill themselves. Isn't that like screwed up?
Yeah.
They want to take your guns off you.
I've been anti-medication my whole life, especially when it comes to antidepressants, and that's through a situation that happened to my father. But, you know, I finally have succumbed to medication, and yes, I take one tablet of fluoxetine every single day, and I'll take it for the rest of my life. It works for me, and not every one tablet's going to work the same for every single person. So some people have to go through a bit of a journey if they want to go on medication to find the right ones. But I was very lucky that the very first tablet I took, it didn't change me. It just took that demon thoughts. I could manage my way through shit days.
Even cut the day, doesn't it? It takes away the peaks, it takes away the troughs, and it's even day.
And I guess it's a good time for me to talk on medication and the myths around medication. Everyone seems to think that if you disclose that you've had medication, you've been on medication, or you're on medication, that you will not be able to have your firearms. That's wrong. You can. I am flat out on medication, and I 100% have my firearms license. So that is a myth. You do have to disclose it. You have to be on it. As soon as you start bullshitting in these things, it's going to go against you.
Don't lie. It really hurts if you lie, but it hurts if you tell the truth too. But just be aware of that.
Yeah. I mean, it's a double-edged sword. It really is. And I don't personally know what the answer is. All I know is what's happening at the moment is wrong. And even, like I say, even if we fixed it tomorrow, it's still going to take a long time for this to get better. So I guess the biggest thing I'm trying to educate people on is know your rights, know the rules.
Absolutely.
Know your GP or your doctor or your psychologist. Have a good relationship with them. Do they have a firearms license? That's going to be a big indicator of whether they're going to, you know.
I'd add to that too, is that not only just know your GP and have a good relationship with them, it is that if you have an indifferent relationship with them, change them. It's okay to change GPs. Get one that understands you. Find somebody that works for you.
Yeah.
Right?
If you don't want to go and have a dinner date with your GP and have a yarn with them, they're not really going to work for you. If you couldn't sit down and have a beer with that person and be friends with them, you probably don't want to disclose every bit of information like that to them, especially in this situation at the moment. The other thing I really want to push on people and encourage people to do is get educated around mental health. So, you know, we've got mates in construction. There's Blueprint for Learning, Mental Health 101. There's Goodyear training. Yeah. Go get them, just like we do first aid. Why do we get first aid? If you hurt yourself, Cam, I can put a Band-Aid on you and say, shit, this is more than I can handle. I need to get you to the professionals before you die. Mental health's the same. You're not there to be the psychologist. You're not there to give them the answers. You're just there to put the Band-Aid on, support that person and help them through the process of getting them the help that they need before they die. Same situation. So if more people got educated around this, a lot of people in those early days of depression probably won't need to go to the GP. You could avoid the whole system process altogether just by talking to a friend, having a friend talk you through the process, take you out hunting, chat out in the hill, and get through that this is the biggest answer for me. This is one thing that I feel is going to change the way mental health is in the country. And this is not just for hunters and firearms. This is the whole country needs to get educated. Every industry needs some sort of mental health training for their staff. If we do that, everyone's going to support each other. Like I said, there's you've broken up with your wife and you've got to go see a counsellor because you're having a hard time. Yeah, it sucks. But you've also got a friend that could probably help you just as much. You're going to clear up the system. The system won't be so jam-packed with people with little things that don't really need to see someone. And the ones that really need it are going to get in. So all of a sudden, we're going to have a system that's not as pressed as it is right now with people trying to get in because everyone's chasing the free counselling that's available because everyone's donating everything for free counselling, the Cliff Edge service. And yet everyone wants free shit. So if you give them free counselling, everyone's going to want it whether you need it or not. But if everyone starts helping each other, we're not going to need so much. We're not going to have a wait list to get into the counselling services. So I really believe we as a community, as a human being, have the ability to help each other just with a little bit of training and just keep up to date with it every couple of 3 years, do another course. I mean, I've done many of them, and every single one I do, I take something away with me and a little bit more empathy towards other people and understand like, shit, yeah, that's why I used to get angry. That's why they're angry. They're not just a prick. They're actually having a shit time. I can see they've got a lot on their plate. You start looking at people differently without making judgment calls. And I think, like I say, if everyone went and got that little bit of education, we're going to put the country in a better place mental health wise. And if your mate is really having a hard time, say, put your guns at my house. I'll store your firearms. And I can take you to the GP if you want, or you can take yourself. Let's go get you the help you need. You need to get help, mate. I can't help you. When they do go there and they ask the questions, you say, oh, yeah, I've stored the guns. Already it's going to put you in a better position.
You've done the right thing.
You've done all the right things. And it's going to help. And I do believe in the Firearms Safety Authority, the people that I've been talking to, they are taking it case by case these days. So they are aware that it's not just one shoe fits all. So everyone's situation is different. And they've got to go through the details and, look what happened because they did it wrong with Christchurch. They didn't do the job properly.
Police didn't do the job properly, right? That's the thing. Police let us down, but it's us, it's the firearms owners that were penalised.
Yeah.
But, what you were saying about getting help early, that's the problem with blokes, isn't it? We don't want to talk about it. No. We don't want to be embarrassed in front of our mates. We don't want to. Well, if you're going to be embarrassed in front of somebody who you consider a mate, they ain't your mate.
Yeah, yeah. And if you're worried about what their judgment of you is going to be,
you're not your mate, right? So, but what I found in my depression and when understanding the pathology of it, what affected me the most is that, and I learned this from the psychologist. He said, Cam, I can't help you until you get off all of these stupid drugs that they've put you on because I'm not dealing with the real you. That's what he said to me. I mean, he's a bit of a hard man. But what I found is that if I got fit, and when I say fit, it can be as little as walking 5Ks a day, but doing a reasonable, I'm not talking about taking 2 hours for a 5K stroll. I'm talking about 40 minutes for a 5K stroll, when you're actually so that you get a sweat up, so that your brain gets tricked and not into this fight-flight response, but into, hang on a minute, I need to breathe in, breathe out. And that breaks the cycle of the depression by doing that. And so I know when I'm, when it's been a bit, rubbish weather or it's been a bit awful and I'm starting to feel a bit down, I know tomorrow morning I need to go for a walk. I have to go for a walk and I have to do that again the next day and the next day. And then all of a sudden I've got a happy disposition again. And it was simple as that for me.
Yeah.
Now, for other people, it's going to be different.
Yeah.
Just doing those little simple things can often lead to that breakthrough that you need.
Yeah. And it's been scientifically proven, for crying out loud, that exercise and getting in nature stimulates you mentally. It's a proven fact. So why would we take that away from people?
Yeah, exactly. 100%. Totally agree with you.
Yeah, doesn't make any sense. And I'm the same. Just recently I've had a bit of a job change and it was a bit of a stressful situation and I was just going downhill and I wasn't exercising. I was on a night shift and I was having all my sleep patterns are up.
Yeah.
just gotten back on the building sites and life's great. I've started going to the gym again. I've started walking up in the hills again just on my days off.
I'm on your face again.
Yeah. And I'm all of a sudden like, right, back on track. But you just got to get out and do those. And, you know, back in the day, for me, it was like, go out and have a beer. And that was not working. It's funny, though, like with what happened to me, it was take your firearms because you're not fit and proper. If you look at the legislation and its form on the website, it's got, you know, to be a fit and proper firearms license holder, but then directly under it, you also need to be not drinking alcohol, do not abuse drugs. Now, at the time when I was really suicidal, I was drinking a lot of alcohol, and if anything was going to kill me, it was the fact that I was drinking alcohol. It was the bad thoughts I'd have when I was drinking. So if those police came to me and said, we're going to take your firearms away because you're drinking too much alcohol and it's making you a not fit and proper person, I would have turned around and went, shit, I need to look at myself here. I am the idiot here, and I would have probably done something about my drinking earlier. But it never gets used in that format. The amount of people drinking too much alcohol and taking too many drugs and still are classed as fit and proper. I think if they got knocked on their door and said, instead of saying you got a mental health issue,
on the bag,
that you need to sort your alcohol problem out. You're constantly at the police station after fighting every weekend at the bar and rah. You think people would look in the mirror and go, I got to sort my life out. It'd actually guide them to do something about themselves rather than, you're having a hard time. Take your guns off.
That's the thing, though, isn't it? You know, dealing with mental health, first of all, you have to decide you want to deal with it. So the person who's most responsible for your mental health is you, the person you see in the mirror. And if you don't like the person that you see in the mirror, that's where you start.
Yeah. 100%. And I say this to a lot of people. Obviously, people reach out to me a lot because I've been through this. You know, my life's not perfect now. I have my ups, my downs, my good days, my bad days. I just know how to manage them because I got help and because I got shared the tools and different things that work for me, and I've created my own toolbox of things that work. But I probably wouldn't if I'd never gone and got help. So I'm able to, you know, find my way through those moments. But when people come to me, it's like I don't actually have the answers for you, but all I know is the fact that you're coming to me tells me you want to do something about it, and you're being actively, you know, you're being active in asking me for help. But you need to look at yourself and go, what do I need to do? You know, you need to make those. I can't force you to go to the gym. I can't force you to walk up Mount Iron. You've got to just go for a stroll around the block, think it out, walk it out. And as you do that, it's going to get easier and easier. And if you're overweight and you haven't exercised for 10 years, just get up in the morning and walk around the block. Walk around the block and then come back in and have your coffee. Simple things like that is just going to stimulate you and get you wanting to do more, because it does put you in a better state of mind, getting out in the hills, getting into nature, doing a little bit of exercise.
Absolutely. But, you know, I've got a good mate. He's one of my buddies that I have on the radio show each week. And he's got a saying, you know, if it's to be, it's up to thee.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's true.
If you want to be the best employee where you work, or you want to be a successful business person, no one else can do that for you. You have to do it for yourself. And mental health is exactly the same. You have to want to I don't like the word fix, because I don't consider myself to be broken. Right? I have different features, and I have to learn how to control some of those features.
Yeah.
But it's up to me. I have to want to do that, because otherwise no one can help you.
Yeah. Well, look, my wife was telling me for years I needed to get help. I'm like, no, piss off, I'm going to the pub.
And that's part of the problem.
20 years on, she's still standing by my side, so I got a lot to owe her, I tell you. She's seen the good in me right from the start, knew that I was a good person hiding behind all that shit. But it wasn't her that got me to the doctor. I didn't go to the doctor and get help. I didn't get off the piss because I'm under the thumb. I physically said, I need to get help. Yeah, okay, maybe you're right. I am going to go to the doctor. I am going to get off piss because I want to, not because you're telling me to. Because every time she'd say, you need to stop drinking, I'd be at the pub having a beer gun. You're not telling me what to do. But yeah, like you say, I had to make that decision myself. And you do need to make those decisions, because it ain't going to get better if you don't. It's only going to get worse. And I do, even with, and it's really hard for me to say, it's not hard, but it's contradicting almost, but with everything that I'm advocating around how bad things are and how shit it is about having your firearm, I still say to people, go get buggy your firearms. If you're just out there hunting.
Just things, aren't they? They're just things.
Yeah, just go and get your help. Your life is way more important than fighting over having a gun, especially if you're just someone, all you do is go for the odd weekend. There's people in the cities that are CEOs that they live every day of their life ready for the raw, one week of the year. If that's the only thing, but you're mentally in a bad position, are you really going to enjoy that week because you're having such a hard time? Get yourself fixed so that you can enjoy that week. It was a burden in my life, and fortunately I'm turning it around into a positive thing. I find now that depression has actually made me the strongest person I am now, because I've learned to manage so many different feelings and emotions in my life, and now I've figured out how to manage them. I can put that energy into things like this and encouraging other people to hopefully get help. And yeah, there's this burden, there's this barrier, but the way I've managed to, like I say, work through the process over 5 years without just jumping out and starting a hate the government page. I've strategically gone along and spoken to people in the back end and figured out a way how we can get this out there, that it's a positive thing, and find ways. And like I say, education's one.
Understand the pathway. There is a pathway through this.
Yeah.
You just need guidance on that pathway, but it's up to you. You have to do it.
Exactly. When we had the Firearms Safety Authority come here to Wanaka, and we took them out on a hunting trip. We filmed a YouTube episode of that. But while they were there, we had a podcast just to get all the facts so that I could get that information to hunters, to firearms license holders, to farmers, whatever. While they were here, I organised through my own community, I put a letter out to every GP, psychologist, counsellor in our Wanaka region to come to a seminar that I set up with Kendra there. I also had Catherine Wright, who's a rural counsellor, who's very aware of that. She's very passionate about this same topic as me. She's a great one to bounce ideas off. And I had this seminar for health practitioners to give them some education around it. Well, we've got 3 practices in Wanaka, and 2 of those bigger practices didn't have one GP turn up. And the smallest one that's only just started with 4 GPs had 2 GPs turn up, and those 2 GPs walked out of there and said to me, I never realised there was a surrender option, a self-surrender option. So instantly Kendra's gone, there is a big gap between the information that's there and getting it to the GPs, to the health practitioners. So instantly she's gone home and she's working on that. So there are things that are changing in that department too, so that the information, the facts are going to the health practitioners. Because like what happened to me, he told me, oh, by law I have to do this. No, he didn't. It was, it was up to him to decide whether I was fit and proper. And I was. If he'd asked me more questions like, okay, you're suicidal, but do you want to die? Of course I don't want to die. That's why I'm in this room. He would have gone, oh, you're not going to.
It's like the questions I had, how do you feel when you go hunting? Why do you collect firearms? Why, because I get enjoyment from it. I find enjoyment from those things. But if you find enjoyment from those things, you're not going to use them to kill yourself, are you?
No, exactly. And like we said earlier, what the process that they drag you through and the way that it was treated back then, it was so bad it actually made me want to walk out that door and step in front of a bus. It was horrible. I felt like I'd just done something.
But at least you wouldn't have killed yourself with a firearm, though.
Hey?
At least you wouldn't have killed yourself with a firearm.
No. And I don't.
Suicide by bus.
Yeah, I don't like talking about means or what I wouldn't do. But it was never in my mind have I ever thought about using a firearms. And I'm not just saying that. It's just never been in the equation for me when I've thought about it. So, yes, I've had those feelings and I've felt worthless and I've wanted to end my life. And, but I know how to manage that now. And like I say, I only know how to manage that because I got the help I needed. And I can't take one pill a day.
Because you sought that help, not anybody else. You did. You decided, I need to sort this out.
Yeah. And if everyone can get a bit more vocal amongst their friends and amongst their peers, farmers, and, with your loved ones, your neighbouring farm, and support each other through those times rather than having people go through this in an isolated situation, because it's just carrying on the stigma. Open up the conversation. Yeah, shit, life's bad. I'm going to surrender my own firearms license just so that I can still do my job but get the help I need. And in 6-12 months' time, I'm going to get it back, get my life on track. You are the number one priority, staying fit and healthy. Yes, there's a barrier, Cam, but I do believe with the noise we're making now, and it's positive noise with the change of legislation that's happening with the Firearms Act. The meeting I had with Nicole McKee was very positive. They're very aware of this situation. It's a delicate one. And by no means am I advocating that every single firearms license holder should own a firearms regardless of their mental state. Absolutely not. If you're not well, get rid of it. And there's people that just shouldn't have a firearms. I understand that.
Put the guns with your mate, get your help, get yourself sorted, then you can take your guns back. It's not a problem.
We certainly don't want to live a life of no legislation, no rules. Otherwise, we're just going to end up like America, which we can see what's going on over there. It's not a healthy place to be either. You got to have rules. You got to have regulations. It'd be like the road. If we didn't have any drink driving rules, any speeding challenges, I don't think the roads would be a very good place to be either. Yeah. So you got to have these things. I just think we've got to navigate our way through this delicate situation. And I honestly believe being more vocal about your own health, your own vulnerabilities, getting your own education, knowing the legislation, not listening to everything you see on Facebook and every little feed that comes through your Facebook feed, because half of it's bullshit. Or if I put my story up now instead of it happened last week, it's not right. It's not right. What happened to me is definitely not happening now. There are systems and processes now, which there wasn't then. It was just police were figuring it out as they went because they got thrown this new rule. So, I do believe, and I'm pretty passionate that things are getting better. It's going to be a really slow road. I'm very curious to see what Minister McKee comes out with the new rewrite, and I'm really looking forward to digging my teeth into that. And I really hope that everyone stands up and has their own say when that opportunity arises. We really need people to...
They've absolutely got to have a say.
We've been too quiet about mental health because we're embarrassed about it. Now's the time to put that behind you and stand tall and go, yeah, I've had depression. This is crap. That's what happened to me. This is stopping me from getting help. Oh, if you could see the emails and messages that I get now, there's hardly a person in this country that hasn't got some sort of mental health issue or crisis going on. It's like to punish everyone. It's just crazy. And like I say, I'm not for or against the government. All I'm saying is this is not right at the moment. The people I've been working with in the authority, Firearms Safety Authority at the moment, they are ringing me, asking me questions. How can we do this better? And it's a positive thing, and they do not want to take everyone's firearms like everyone thinks, but they do got to have rules. And they're in the process of trying to figure out ways to get younger people into it, as is the NZDA. We need to get. They want to get more. It's like over 50s, I think, is the majority of firearms license holders. We need to get younger ones through, but they also know with what they're doing now with all this stuff is making it harder.
Exactly. Same with the clubs situation. The key to getting young people involved in shooting sports is easy access in a controlled environment to those firearms, and clubs are the perfect position for that. But the police have overregulated the clubs, and a lot of clubs are facing closing down.
Yeah.
We're running up a bit against time, though. How can people get hold of you, Glenn? How can they find out about Mental Hunts?
Well, we've just recently launched our website, mentalhunts.co.nz. That's got a little tab at the end of Contact Us if you wanted to get hold of me via the email there.
Yep.
Also, Instagram is our main port of where we really started, I suppose. So a lot of our information, a lot of topics we have go through there. We've also got a YouTube channel, that YouTube channel is not about trying to take over the world and be the next big thing. It's about trying to get information out to people about mental health. We've got our next episode, we've got a fella coming on with a real life story, which is going to be quite amazing for people to hear. We've had the Firearms Safety Authority on that YouTube channel. So we've got all the information as it is right now, which will probably change, but at the moment we'll cross that bridge then. Yeah, and just trying to get that information out to people. It's about trying to create a following so that we can get information to people. It's not about trying to be the next influence. That's not what we're about.
Influencing individuals to take agency and solve their own problems.
That's it, yeah, and open up these conversations. Everyone's out raising money to print a brochure. I don't believe that that's going to help the country. I think opening up the dialogue, changing the narrative, and actually sharing your vulnerabilities is going to help the country's mental health crisis more than a brochure or a free counselling session. And to do that, to get educated and to talk to your mates, it costs no one nothing.
Yeah,
it's free. Yeah.
All right, Glenn, thank you very much for coming on The Crunch. And that information is vital out there for listeners. Search on Instagram or YouTube, even on Facebook, Mental Hunts, or go to mentalhunts.co.nz. And thank you for coming on the show, Glenn.
Yeah, thanks, Cam. I really appreciate you having me on.
I felt talking about this topic with Glenn was very important. It's one area that we didn't have time for last week when I was talking with Hugh Devereux-Mack. As blokes, we need to talk about this, and being no dicks about it is a non-starter. It's important. Talk to your mates. Tell me what you think. Email inbox@realitycheck.radio or text to 2057.
Thanks for tuning in to RCR, Reality Check Radio. If you like what you're listening to, or even if you don't agree with what you're hearing, you can get in touch with us by texting us your message at 2057. That's 2057. Or if you'd rather email us, you can at inbox@realitycheck.radio. We'd love to hear from you, so get in touch with us now.
This is The Crunch with Cam Slater. Conversations with a side of controversy, right here on RCR.
Right now it's time for Olivia's View. Olivia Pierson, welcome back to The Crunch.
Oh, thanks, Cam.
What have you got for me this week? Let me guess.
Well, yeah. Yeah, probably no surprise, but I'm going to talk about what happened at that rally in Pennsylvania on Saturday, so I'll just launch right in.
Go straight into that.
Okay. So, if angels fight, weak men must fall, for heaven still guards the right. That's Shakespeare's Richard II, spoken just before the king realizes that his kingdom has been lost. Well, I've never seen a man who is blessed with a more powerful guardian angel than President Trump. He came so close to death on Saturday at the rally in Pennsylvania, and the Secret Service clearly failed him. It was no thanks to them that he survived that first volley of shots. It came down to a random turn of his head. Then he dropped down to the ground before his bodyguards covered him and got him out. Thankfully, a SWAT team sniper took down the shooter. For someone like me, who has followed Trump's dramatic foray into politics eagerly over the last 9 years, I can only say that I'm not surprised by what happened last Saturday, although I do remain thoroughly disgusted that his murder, in the minds of some, is a strategy to stop him from winning another election. Trump has had nothing from the political environment except demonization. From the moment he came down that Trump Tower escalator with Melania to announce his candidacy in 2015, the pitch of political discourse became febrile, and the whole media machine throughout the entire world mocked, derided, abused, and defamed him every single day and every single night. Yet, I watched him become a powerful and deeply effective president as his enemies indulged in every psychodrama they could think of, from false sex assault allegations to impeachment trials, Russia collusion, and insurrection charges for January the 6th. But none of it worked. So he stalwartly tried again for a third time. That's heart. and this time being subjected to even more hostilities via weaponized lawfare, so his political opponents could besmirch him as a convicted felon throughout the election. But his favorable poll numbers just keep growing higher. Only a few weeks ago, we watched him try to do a debate with Biden where the world saw the truth of Biden's very real brain damage. And a coup within the Democrat Party was put into motion, led by Obama. Hubristically, a whole bunch of Hollywood actors, spurred on by George Clooney, voiced their vapid opinions in the mistaken notion that the world gives a hoot in hell about actors' political urges. The Democrats were in freefall as the party looked to be collapsing in on itself, just months out from the coming election. Then, lo and behold, an attempt on Trump's life suddenly occurred. The media spin is telling us it was a lone wolf shooter, 20-year-old Thomas Matthew Crooks, who seems to have the usual profile, friendless, funny-looking, social outcast, gun nut. Well, if anyone believes this lone wolf theory, then I have a big new shiny bridge to sell you at cost. The Secret Service are responsible for the security of these rallies. They send in advance teams to do a survey and then request the resources from HQ in Washington, D.C. that the team suggests are needed. The fact that at that rally venue, there was an unsecured open rooftop with a ladder only 150 meters away from President Trump's podium position is unheard of. If you listen to people who know how to do this job, such as Dan Bongino, who used to be a security agent for the Secret Service, Bongino told Fox News that we are trained out to 1,000 yards with the Secret Service counter-sniper team. How did they miss someone only 1/5 of the way there in broad daylight on a white roof? Bongino also said that he knows for a fact that the Trump team have been asking the service for more resources that have been rebuffed. A Secret Service spokesperson claims that this is a false claim. Bongino said it is not a false claim and that there needs to be proper congressional and oversight hearings into how the service so catastrophically failed not only Donald Trump, but also the others who were shot, one of them to death, 50-year-old much-loved husband and father, Corey Comparatori. Many people saw the shooter crawling around on the rooftop with his AR-15. They alerted police well before he was even set up and able to shoot off any rounds. Josh Hawley, Republican senator for Missouri, has written a letter to the Senate Homeland Security Committee demanding an immediate full investigation into the massive security failure that resulted in an attempt on President Trump's life and the murder of an innocent American. That letter reads, quote, "Although we do not have all the facts, the little that we do know suggests a staggering security failure. I call on you to launch a full, public, and comprehensive committee investigation into this assassination attempt and failures to adequately protect the former president. This investigation must include public testimony, hearings, and robust oversight over the relevant federal departments as they respond to this assassination attempt. Sworn testimony must be heard from Alejandro Mayorkas, Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, and Secret Service Director Kimberly Cheetle. Nothing should be classified or withheld from the public." End quote. The last thing Republican leaders want now is another JFK-style cover-up with the real facts of the intelligence agencies being classified and hidden from the public for the next 60 years. After Trump was inaugurated as president in 2017, it became a common occurrence for dumb celebrities to openly fantasize about his assassination. Even just off the top of my head, I can bring to mind several examples. Tasteless comedian Kathy Griffin holding up a severed Trump head, dripping with blood, while ISIS was rampaging through Syria and Iraq, beheading people in real time. Johnny Depp at the Glastonbury Festival saying, while off his face on drugs, "When was the last time an actor assassinated a president?" This said to great laughter and whoops from a zombified crowd of utter morons. Madonna admitting at a women's march while wearing her pussy hat that she had thought long and hard about blowing up the White House. Even though we don't expect much sense out of her plastic head, the bimbo foolishness of that statement said publicly was quite shocking. There was even a New York City production of Shakespeare's Julius Caesar, which had Caesar dressed up as a Donald Trump lookalike, with wig, suit, and red tie, as he was stabbed to death on the Senate floor. These expressed fantasies about Trump's death became commonplace, normalizing talk of violence against the man. There were also the many, many commentators who constantly compared Trump to Hitler. One psychiatrist, Alan Francis, told Brian Stelter on CNN, quote, "Trump is as destructive a person in this century as Hitler, Stalin, and Mao were in the last century. He may be responsible for many more million deaths than they were," unquote. The entire Biden-Harris campaign message, on the odd occasion when they even bother to campaign at all, is built solely around Trump being a dictator if he gets into office again, who will end American democracy altogether. They have repeated over and over again that Trump is a threat to America. So the attempted assassination on Trump was an inside job. Trump's and America's real enemies, the Democrats, have a term they like to use called stochastic terrorism, where extreme rhetoric is used to intentionally incite random acts of violence. Here is the Bunny Boiler squad member, AOC, who has a particular fondness for this term.
I think it's uncomfortable serving with people who engage in what many experts deem stochastic terrorism, which is the incitement of violence in an incitement of violence using digital means and large platforms so that individual themselves may not be the one that's wielding a weapon.
Glenn Beck was accused of stochastic terrorism, so was Alex Jones, and so, of course, was Trump. And now Trump's VP pick, J.D. Vance, is being accused of it because he blames the White House for the attempted assassination of Trump. The left, with this one clunky, engineered term, combine their aversion to free speech with their love of fomenting violence, then claim it is a tactic that conservatives are using. Yet neither Beck, nor Jones, nor Trump, nor Vance actually have fomented violence through their rhetoric. But the Democrats sure have. Because they have control of 80% of the 24-hour media machine on America's airwaves, they actually did manage to create a culture of violent hysteria. The George Floyd riots alone showed us that in 2020. And here is former Democrat Senator Claire McCaskill on MSNBC at the end of last year telling the world that Trump is more dangerous than Hitler and Mussolini.
A lot of people have tried to draw similarities between Mussolini and Hitler and the use of the terminology like vermin and the drive that those men had towards autocracy and dictatorship. The difference, though, I think makes Donald Trump even more dangerous, and that is he has no philosophy he believes in. He is not trying to expand the boundaries of the United States of America. He's not trying to overcome a neighboring country like Putin is in Ukraine. He is not going for some grandiose scheme of international dominance. All he wants is to look in the mirror and see a guy who's president. All he cares about is selfish self-promotion. That's the only philosophy he has, which makes him even more dangerous because he has actually said out loud that it would be okay to terminate the Constitution to keep him in power. He said this. He actually said those words. And the irony is all of these supposed conservative folks that have populated the Republican Party all stood around and with their thumb in their mouth going, well, yeah, okay, I guess so. It's bizarre.
Trump never said to terminate the Constitution any more than he told people to inject themselves with household bleach to cure COVID. He said 2 years out of office that the widespread election fraud of 2020 should terminate the rules and regulations, even those found in the Constitution. And he was right. The Constitution does not allow for election fraud, so should have made that election mute. The Democrats subverted it, and the Republicans were too weak to hold them accountable because of the magnitude of deceit and lawfare under the guise of COVID that they managed to pull off. Trump never sexually assaulted any woman. He never committed any felony in any state, and he never incited any insurrection. But these people want everyone to believe that he did all these things and that he is worse than Hitler and Mussolini, which is to dehumanize him. Joe Biden said at his rally last weekend to camera, "It's time to put Trump in the bullseye." Now, this is how you can effectively push an assassination into the reality of human events without even having to bother with actively recruiting or training a patsy, a fall guy. All the Democrats have to do in this toxic environment that they consciously created is to pull back on security details, and a hate-fueled misfit will do the rest. So the pulling back on security details is exactly what transpired in Pennsylvania, according to Dan Bongino, and numerous other counter-snipers, snipers, and ex-military operatives or ex-Secret Service agents who have come out of the woodwork to comment on the unbelievable negligence which took place at that rally. The protocol for a consciously created assassination or terrorist attempt then looks like this, and it is as simple as 1 + 1 = 2. Create ridiculously extreme rhetoric and play it through all media organs 24/7, plus withhold what Trump needs to keep him safe, equals highest chance for optimal conditions for random assassination to occur. And after a violent act has occurred, all the Democrat leaders send nice messages of condolences and prayers to the family while hiding behind the ever-present farce of plausible deniability. This hit on Trump may be the clearest example of stochastic terrorism ever seen, a term Democrats pushed to attempt to morally condemn the rhetoric of others while they set about deploying it at Trump, knowing full well how it works. It's their baby. It's their term. They know that because it is their tactic and invention. Whether this assassination attempt was a case of that or a genuine patsy recruited for the job by the intelligence blob, which is highly possible given what a 20-year-old kid managed to achieve in broad daylight without being stopped, remains to be examined through proper congressional investigation. But it must be done and done swiftly. Either way, it was an inside job. But Trump still lives, and one can only put that down to Providence. For he seems to have an important mission to accomplish in this lifetime that nobody else can do in such a manufactured climate of weaponized political hate. I believe Donald Trump is here to save the Republic. It's his destiny. And whatever gods may be, they seem to love him. And I do too. And that is Olivia's view for the Crunch this week.
Wow, Olivia, that was fantastic. But you know, when you put it all like that, it does look like a strategy from the Democratic Party to kill Donald Trump. And if you go back to the Clinton years, what did Hillary Clinton talk about when she was campaigning against Trump? The deplorables.
Basket of deplorables.
Basket of deplorables. They're the people who support Trump. More than 50% of the voters. She described as a basket of deplorables. Biden, from the very get-go, has always demonized Trump. Just an hour before Trump took the stage to make that speech, he put on Facebook that the country needed leaders, not dictators.
Yeah.
And is it coincidental that there was an article, in a left-wing journal about him being Hitler-esque, another one that described him as a Caesar, numerous talking heads that say Trump must be stopped at any cost? Is it a coincidence?
At any cost. What the hell does that mean?
But
right there.
A threat to democracy, Hitler-esque dictator. The media are in on this. They even the thing about the Supreme Court that upheld the Constitution and said no, President Trump is protected by executive privilege. They now vow and declare that the Supreme Court has made him a king. Americans hate kings. Right?
They
deposed a king. They revolted against a king.
Sure did.
But all they said was, no, it's there in the Constitution. But somehow it was the Supreme Court creating Donald Trump as a king, again demonizing him.
Yeah, and that's also why they keep repeating this lie that he wants to eradicate the Constitution. Nothing could be further from the truth. The Democrats want the Constitution gone, not the Republicans. And I just want to say, Cam, too, that I felt very, very emotional when I saw Trump go down like that. It was very upsetting. I can only imagine how his family felt. They're messing with our guy, so hard. But then he stood up, pumped his fist, blood on his face, had the presence of mind to feel for the crowd and know what they were watching and speak to them, to let them know he was okay. And I got to say, I just burst into tears. And today, watching him walk into that Republican National Convention to great love from his supporters with a white bandage over his ear and tears in his eyes, he was moved.
Yeah.
My God, that undid me. And after such an emotional weekend where, I alternated between pure fury and tears to see what was done to him. But there he is, still standing and so strong, but still a little exhausted. I don't mind saying it made me blub.
What I couldn't get over was the absolute ham-fisted way the Secret Service acted. Now, Trump's a big man. He's 6'5".
No, he's 6'2".
6 foot. We're still a big man.
Yeah,
right?
He's a big guy. Yeah,
and they've got a bunch of pygmies that are protecting him. Well, they can't protect him. There's one woman security service person there who's standing in front of Trump, and her head doesn't even get to his shoulders.
I know.
Right?
Yeah,
So
DEI.
How can they protect somebody with a huge presence like that? And then, of course, there's all the videos of the blokes who were the Secret Service guys piling in on top, and then some of the also-rans. In fact, the ironic one is the short little dumpy one who couldn't even find her holster.
Yeah, and hid behind a barricade.
It was astonishing. But like you, I cannot believe that they left a rooftop which is effectively a chip shot, 140 yards, right? It's not even 140 meters, 140 yards. Someone who's skilled with firearms could make that shot at a president, even side on, because it's the only view that they had of Trump side on, and therefore the only viable shot was at his head. That's an easy shot.
Even without a telescopic sight, that's quite an easy shot. Hey,
yeah, it is.
If you're good,
without a sight. If you've got a sight, it's a piece of cake. Yeah, and to give you an example, I've taken people who are non-shooters to a range. I've stuck an egg on a post at 100 meters, and then within about 5 or 6 shots, they've been able to shoot the egg off the post.
Yeah,
it's easy to do. Yeah. So I can't believe that they had our rooftop unsecured. B, that the two guys who were on the rooftop behind Trump took so long to react when they were told. They must have had it in the earpieces. Hey, there's a guy with a gun. And
I know that's so suspicious, Cam.
So, I agree. There has to be an inquiry there. But this reminds me, though, of the assassination of John F. Kennedy. Now, Kennedy was going to withdraw from Vietnam, and the military-industrial complex thought, no, we're not going to have that, so they killed him. And who took over? Lyndon Johnson.
Lyndon Johnson.
And they stayed in Vietnam. Now, Trump has said he's going to end the war in Ukraine.
Yeah. And support Israel.
More
than Biden does. And, you know, Trump's not talking bullshit about two-state solutions either, is he?
No. So
he doesn't.
It's a terrible, terrible thing, but it's amazing he survived. And it'll be very, very hard for anyone to try and kill him now.
Look, I really feel that. I feel like the fog is lifting. Everything is being exposed, and there's still a ways to go. Of course, we know we can't feel too lucky, but there's a change. I just feel people can see the Democrats for the evil party they are and the terrible things they've done. And the most beautiful thing to me is that people are now starting to see Trump as the real life political hero I've always known he was. You know, we are damn lucky if a person like that comes along politically once in our lifetimes, you know, and he is that guy. And I've always realized that. And he's taken on the whole establishment, and it has fired the full force of its hate against him. And here he is about to win another presidency. He is remarkable, and I feel lucky to be alive to watch this.
I mean, that's the thing, Olivia, the Biden campaign's entire narrative was that Trump is
a dictator.
A threat to democracy.
Yeah.
And therefore he needs to be taken out. And they might say, oh, we meant electorally, we meant at the ballot box, well, whatever. That's their rhetoric, that he is an enemy of the state.
Well, they came up with that awful term, stochastic terrorism. Their side use it. You know, they know what they're doing.
Their entire campaign is based around that. They can't use that anymore.
No, they can't.
Right? And so, you know, they've brainwashed the feeble mind of Joe Biden to say those words. Now he has to learn new words when he's in no state to learn new words.
To learn anything.
So can you imagine what the next thing is going? I mean, it's insane. Right?
And can you imagine how good the debate between Kamala Harris and J.D. Vance is going to be?
Yeah, Kamala giggling Harris versus a guy who has been in the Marines, knows how to handle himself, and says some pretty amazing things himself.
Yeah, he does.
He's good enough to write a book. You know,
good. Oh, and everybody read Hillbilly Elegy if you haven't already. It is such a rollicking good read, and really touching. It's a very touching book about his upbringing, and his saving grace was his grandmother who raised him. And it was on it's probably still on the New York Times bestseller list. I mean, they only ever have 200 books up there at once.
I'll change it now, that's for sure. The New York Times will change that. Anyway, Olivia, great to have you on The Crunch again. It's a fantastic view, and I'm sure we're going to get a lot of mail about that, which I'll forward through to you when it comes through.
Oh, great. Thanks a lot, Cam. Talk soon.
Tell me what you think about Olivia's view. Email inbox@realitycheck.radio or text to 2057.
Thanks for tuning in to RCR, Reality Check Radio. Do you like what you're listening to or dislike what you're listening to? Either way, we want to hear from you. Get in touch with us now. You can text us with your message to 2057. That's 2057. Or email us at inbox@realitycheck.radio. We'd love to hear from you, so connect with us today.
You're listening to The Crunch with Cam Slater, right here on RCR, Reality Check Radio.
Now it's time for Cam's Buddies. This week, we'll find out what they think about the attempted assassination of Donald Trump. My producer has them all lined up and ready to go. Let's go now to Cam's Buddies. Welcome to Cam's Buddies, Miles. Good to have you back.
Hi, Cam. How are you today?
Yeah, good. Hey, I want to talk
Excellent.
about attempted Trump assassination. What your thoughts are on that?
Well, surely it wasn't an assassination. I get all my information from CNN. Surely he just stumbled on stage and there were several loud popping sounds. Do you mean to tell me there was an attempted assassination?
Wow, there's some crazies on the internet who are saying it was all staged and he did it to himself.
Unbelievable. It is just a shocking event, and I am very glad that Trump survived. And, you know, my heart goes out to the people who were killed and injured. It's just an appalling situation.
Now, you know a little bit about Operation Security and situational awareness. What do you think about the lack of cover, aerial cover, and the lack of security around tall buildings within literally a chip shot for a half-decent shooter?
It's inexcusable, in a word, inexcusable. It is so unbelievable that the Secret Service or the local police or a combination of both didn't have someone even on the water tower, let alone on every building roof. And because they didn't have people on a roof, I mean, I can put my tinfoil hat on and claim some sort of conspiracy. So, you know, this whole thing is just inexcusable, and it's unbelievable that the Secret Service, who go to an event, or at least a place where an event is being held, well before the time, they scope the entire operation and they say, here, 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 these are vantage points, we've got to have people there. You know, this is what they do. And that's the first thing that's unbelievable. The second thing that's unbelievable, which I alluded to when I started speaking to you, is the gaslighting that the mainstream media, particularly CNN. I mean, if you had any doubts about CNN before this terrible assassination attempt, your doubts would be absolutely confirmed by the fact of CNN's reporting. It was an appalling example of how the mainstream media are telling half-truths, lies, and indeed misrepresenting the facts. And, you know, I'm just like, well, Trump is lucky to be alive, and I'm glad to see Trump stood up at the Republican Congress, and he appeared to have very little wrong with him, although I'm sure this would prey on anyone's mind.
No, exactly. You know, you and I both know what the sound of bullets zipping past your head feels like, even, you know, if it's 10 feet above you. You hear those bullets come, right? It's very disconcerting. Having one clip your ear and several more start flying through the air, that's fearful type of stuff going on there. So, you know, for him to stand up and let everyone know that he was okay shows a presence of mind that I'm not sure I would have.
And, I mean, not only presence of mind, but incredible courage. Often these plots have a secondary shooter or a backup, all of that. And I found that the Secret Service cover after he stood up was also sadly lacking. And, I mean, if I was Trump, I would be quite upset about this whole situation. It didn't need to occur. It simply didn't need to occur if the security had been done according to normal protocols. I mean, there was nothing. They didn't need to do anything extra. Let's be quite frank about that. They just needed to do the normal security protocols, and they didn't.
What I couldn't believe is that, you know, Trump's 6'2", reportedly, that's his height, and they have a whole lot of midgets as his close protection. Well, how are they going to stop a bullet? You know, when his whole head and shoulders is above the height of some of the close protection operators. And then some of those close protection operators couldn't even hold a pistol properly or even put it back in their holster. I've never seen a travesty of poor firearms handling by people who should know better.
Yeah, I mean, listen, if you take everything in its entirety, you begin to wonder how much ignorance and stupidity can occur on the same day. And, my favourite thing is don't mistake ignorance or stupidity for a cabal. But honestly, really, if you look at the basic mistakes that were made in security, and there were quite a few of them, as you've said, you begin to wonder what was going on, who was looking after security, and in fact, whether or not it was part of the plan. And, I'm not averse to putting on a tinfoil hat occasionally. And certainly during COVID, I was, what they were saying was a conspiracy guy. But the reality is, how many mistakes can a seasoned security team make? And I would say every seasoned security team dreads a mistake and they work hard not to do it. And yet they left Trump basically hanging out to dry with vantage positions for a sniper, unguarded, unmanned, and then they put people in front of Trump who were less than his height, and if there had been a plan B, heaven forbid, there might have been a different story.
Well, I mean, that's the thing that concerns me, is that it looks like the Secret Service people didn't know what to do. Now, the microphones were all on. Trump's at the bottom of that microphone. You can hear everything. So you could hear the guys arrive there. They secure the principal, Trump, and then you hear one guy says, right, move on me, go, 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 and nothing happens.
Nothing happens.
And then you hear a Secret Service agent saying, what's the plan? What's the plan? So they didn't know.
Unbelievable.
I mean, the plan
Unbelievable.
is to get them out of there as fast as you can. That's what you do. And I can't believe it. So, I think there needs to be some serious questions raised and an inquiry into what was going on there.
Well, I'll tell you what was going on. It was rank incompetence at almost every level. And you have to wonder, when you stack that up against the tinfoil hat guys, whether the tinfoil hat guys are actually right.
Well, that's right. You got to have a look at it. Anyway, Miles.
Exactly. And
got a rush.
Yeah. One good thing.
Yeah.
One good thing is Trump certainly gathered a whole lot of momentum towards winning the November election.
Yeah, I think you're right. Absolutely think you're right on that.
Okay.
Thanks, Miles.
Cheers. See you.
Welcome to Cam's Buddies. Lindley, good to have you back.
Oh, hi, Cam. What a week, eh?
Oh, well, it's a week, all right. It's been full on since Sunday morning New Zealand time or Saturday evening in the US, which is what I want to talk about today. What are your thoughts on the dreadful attempted assassination of Donald Trump?
Well, I've got a lot of thoughts, of course, and I won't cover all my thoughts because some of the buddies can, have their input, which hopefully be a wee bit different. But I actually was watching it live as it happened. I'd been out for a run and got soaked in the rain, and I came back and got a nice hot cup of coffee and sat down and watched it. It took ages for Trump to arrive. It was an absolutely huge crowd. Some said over 30,000. Some said 50,000, and our paper said a few thousand. But anyway, there was a lot there, and it seemed to me when he started to speak that he was a bit dull for him, actually. But after a few minutes into his speech, he said he was going off the teleprompters because they were just too boring. In my opinion, that's what saved his life, because he then, instead of being square on to the teleprompters, he rotated away to the right, and he began turning his head to and fro from the crowd back to the big screen as he was explaining the illegal immigrant numbers under Biden. And then he suddenly swatted his right ear as if he'd been stung, and I thought, what on earth happened? And then some shots rang out, and he dived to the floor, so you sort of knew what had happened by then. The security pounced on him and held him down. It was all drama. Someone yelled out, shoot it down, and the group of security bundled him off the stage. So that was the event.
You must have been shocked watching that live, Lindley.
Well, you know, you sort of get shocked afterwards, don't you? It's sort of all there and you think, what on earth's happening? But what unfolded after that is what I really want a couple of comments on, because the shooting itself was nothing short of a Dad's Army episode as it is unfolding now. It was reported on Tuesday that, with video evidence, that local police were actually chasing Crooks, that's a suspect, around 25 minutes prior to the shooting. And they were chasing him from building to building. This is outside the perimeter. And this video, it shows it pretty clearly. And it showed the gunman really clearly crawling up the roof with a large gun in his hand in front of him and sort of propped up on his elbows. And people could be heard shouting, "There's a man on the roof, there's a man on the roof. He's got a gun, he's got a gun." And some were running away and sort of falling over themselves. But the police couldn't see the gunman because they were too close to the building.
Yes.
And one stood on the other's shoulders, apparently, to see up onto the roof. And then he fell off when the gunman pointed the gun at him. Well, I must say I would have fallen off too. But no alert got through to security near Trump. He should have been taken instantly off stage. And really, it was a full-on black comedy, and we don't have the time here to actually discuss it fully. But I know I shouldn't speak ill of my own sex, and some of the listeners might be upset with me, but what the hell were women doing in the front line Secret Service of this magnitude? One had a really long ponytail, and I can tell you from experience that if you bend down, if you've got a long ponytail, it immediately swings down and around your eyes, so you can't see. And they were putting sunglasses on and off. They were completely disorientated. And apparently this is a doing of the DEI. And don't ask me to remember what that's about. Oh, I know what it's about.
Deputy hires in a statement that the Secret Service was going to ensure there were 30% of their agents were going to be women. Didn't seem to matter about quality, just that they were women. And so, and we saw that Trump, a 6'2" man, being protected, you know, in inverted commas, protected by some 5'0" females. And they may be very good at their job, but they didn't look very good at their job in that moment right there.
Well, personally, I don't think they can ever be good at a job like that for a number of reasons. Women are absolutely brilliant at some things, but throwing people around in a life-saving incident, throwing somebody around the size of Trump is just not going to happen. And that woman that was on his right, up on the stage, she bent down, she was rummaging around for his cap that one of the other chaps had dropped. So she completely exposed Trump, his head and his torso, to any other would-be shooters that were out there. And she rummaged around, and then she got the cap. I mean, as if that's important in the heat of the moment.
Finley, I'll give her the benefit of the doubt on that one. Trump may have said, "Get my hat." You know, now we didn't hear that, but I'll give her the benefit of the doubt because he was, you know, aware of what was going on around him sufficiently to say, "I want to put my shoes back on," right? So he could have said, "Grab my hat." So, but you're right. She did bend down and she did, expose Trump. What she perhaps should have done is said, "We'll get it later, sir."
Absolutely. That's exactly what she should have said, because there were about 30,000 red hats there.
Yeah.
That was totally ridiculous. But I actually, you might be surprised to know, I do know how women think. And women are absolutely brilliant at multitasking and multi-thinking, whereas men can hold focus on one thing for a very long time.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons you shouldn't have a woman there, because they will try thinking of all things at once, including red hats and that sort of thing. And then when they got him back to the vehicle that he was to be taken away on, if you have a look at it again, they're running backwards and forwards, not knowing what to do, sunglasses on, sunglasses off.
One couldn't even find her to put the pistol away. She was struggling times to get it. I mean, it was the worst firearms handling that I've seen in a very, very long time. And these people are supposed to practice this to not make mistakes, but there was a lot of mistakes there. So I think there needs to be an inquiry that looks into the actions of the Secret Service and the actions and decision-making that ensured that Trump wasn't adequately protected from people in elevated positions.
Well, apparently all of the security was very mixed because they had sent a full quota to a nearby rally that Jill Biden was at.
Convenient.
So they were short on numbers, but there were problems with getting them to agree to give him numbers anyway in the first place. It was absolutely outrageous. I'm just so pleased that he actually survived, and to see him come into the convention, I mean, that was absolutely incredible. He came in on Monday.
Yeah.
And he did look pretty shell-shocked when he came in, and he looked like he was a bit tearful.
He looked a bit emotional.
But anyway, pardon?
He looked a bit emotional. That's my feeling that I got.
He did, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was. He looked a wee bit sort of emotionally shaken. But anyway, he rallied around there, and I thought he did an absolutely fantastic job. And I thought the guy that gave the speech, which was Sean O'Brien, who's the president of the the Teamsters Union or whatever it's called, he gave a brilliant speech, and he summed it up in the end, said Trump's one tough SOB. That pretty much summed everything up. But it was an outrageously disorganised outfit on the part of the security. And I don't know that we'll ever hear the truth. I mean, it's not called Washington for nothing. They wash everything, don't they, including the truth.
Yeah.
And I don't think we'll... Pardon?
No, I think you're right. I was just laughing, saying about Washington. I thought that was funny.
Oh, yeah, well, I mean, what are the FBI going to tell us? It's taken them 60 years to tell us what seems to be the right story of John F. Kennedy.
Yeah.
And they've never told the truth in any of the conspiracies they've had against Trump, right from when he was won the presidency. And all those, or most of those things have been proven, set-ups.
Well, I don't know
if the FBI's been involved.
Yeah, I don't know if you can trust anything the FBI does. I think they're a compromised organisation. That should be one of the things that Trump does when he wins the presidency again, is set about reforming some of these intelligence agencies because they've done a poor job or have been actually involved in manufacturing lies about Trump. And so,
absolutely.
You really can't trust them, and that's an indictment. The FBI was compromised, back in the 20s and 30s with criminals, and so they had to do a cleanup once they'd got on top of the mafia. They had to do a cleanup of that. So you're almost having to look at another compromised situation where they're going to have to clean up the fifth columnists that are sitting inside the Secret Service and in the FBI.
I think it would be a big ask, just quietly. But, I mean, on the other hand, America's it's got a huge population, and a lot of them, they don't even know who's in the country, really. But, it has been founded on the Wild West, and it sort of still is the Wild West in some ways.
Totally.
But, we've had our incidents here too, haven't we?
Well, we've got this political rhetoric that's increasingly violent. The Maori Party deputy leader on the weekend was talking about that the government is a white supremacist and committing genocide against Maori, which is just fanciful. But that's the sort of stochastic terrorism. There's a term for that. That these politicians and agitators use to foment mischief. And then they say, well, no, I never said that. But it's, it gives them an excuse to say the things that they do. And the Maori Party are the worst at it.
Well, of course, they should be jumped on immediately, and that's the problem. We're far too soft, and, to have the Maori Party prancing through Parliament in fancy dress and everything that no one else is allowed to do, they should have been booted out as an example. The very instant they did that.
Yeah, exactly.
And that, you've got to nip things in the bud, in my opinion. But I mean, even, I just thought straight away about watching those women, and as I said, I am a woman, but that was the first thing I thought of. Oh my God, look at them. They're just not up to the job. And then in the some of the papers, other people have said the same thing apparently, and they're saying that people like me are right-wing conspiracy theorists because I'm saying these terrible things about women.
Yeah,
so that's another example.
I'd just like to challenge those people who call you right-wing extremists to say seriously and very quickly right-wing racists and not fluff it. I'd just love to hear them try and say that. It could be funny.
Yes. I would too, but I'll tell you what, I'm very fit and very strong and quite tall. I'd have as much show as of throwing you around as those women had of throwing Trump around.
Yeah.
Because women just are not strong enough.
No, they aren't. And on that note, Lindley, I've got to go to the next caller, which is Paul, and he's waiting on the line, so we'll talk again next week. Thank you.
Okay, Cam, take care. See you later.
See you, bye. Welcome to Cam's Buddies, Paul. Good to have you back.
Thank you, Cam, and good afternoon.
Yeah, well, it's been a busy week this week with calamities and upsets all around the world. Of course, the biggest is the attempted assassination of Donald Trump, and I'm interested to know your thoughts on that and what you've observed, who you think may be, obviously the shooter's responsible, but do the Democratic Party and the media have any responsibility for egging people on to talk about Trump? So I'm interested in your thoughts.
Yes, well, when someone like the leader of the free world says something to the effect that Donald Trump is an absolute threat to democracy, and then later says, I wish you well when you're in your recovery, did anybody who tried to assassinate, say, Hitler in the past, say, I wish you a quick recovery from my attempted assassination? Now, or from the attempted assassination that happened at the time. I think people like The View and a whole lot of the media that are very left-leaning in their politics, I see that Joy Behar has taken her YouTube account down because some of the silly things that she said in the past, she may realise that she's crossed the line. And also I look and I think people cross the line, but people on the right don't cross the line the same. Like people on the left are saying, basically, we keep going and going and going until we've crossed it and then we go, oh, looks like we made a mistake, we crossed the line. Whereas people on the right seem to think, well, it's a fair cop, your turn, let's be pleasant and not violent about such things. But I think that with the closeness of that bullet, I think Donald Trump's life was spared for him to do something great. And I think he thinks the same thing. And with his now choosing a vice president who's always been a never Trumper, so and yet he's come around. So I think it's actually quite interesting how all these things have played out. And if Reagan got a between 10 and 20% bounce when they tried to assassinate him in the polls, I mean, I don't know how long it will last. I don't know if it will translate to election day, but it's definitely more here than meets the eye. And also, I heard said that people were pointing at the shooter and local law enforcement. How did they miss a ladder going up to a roof? How did they miss a bloke taking a rifle up onto the roof? and getting that put to a position. And I also heard, but I don't know how true it is, and I've been trying to verify it, that the protection squad, that one of the snipers had seen him and was asking for permission to let off a shot. And it wasn't until the guy shot first that he was able to let off the shot and shoot him. Now, when I watched the video and it looked like he moved his tripod to do that, I don't know if that's true or not.
Yeah,
what I do know is...
I don't think that is true, but I do know that there was several minutes where police at least were aware of a potential shooter on the roof. There's been claims that it was 25 minutes or 30 minutes, but the news organisation that published those has removed those articles. So I think it's at least 3 minutes that there was, a lot can happen in 3 minutes. The whole incident from the moment he started speaking till he was off the stage, bundled out by the Secret Service, was about 3 minutes in total. The whole sequence, including people saying he's on the roof, is a total of 6 minutes. So time goes slowly.
And so what I think is interesting is those people that didn't, had they suddenly got up, protected Trump and moved him off the stage because there was a sniper there, would have probably saved the life of the guy that lost his life and the critical injuries of the other two. So there's a few questions to be answered there. And I hear also saying that Donald wanted to get it back up and continue his speech because that's how defiant he is and how he's saying, you won't take me. I'm kind of on an errand for our country, and I'm here to make our country great again. So I think that it was bound to happen. I don't think it was anybody in the CIA type involvement because they wouldn't have seen a muffin like that to go and do a job like that. That would have been done correctly. I mean, if you sent one of the CIA people there, they wouldn't have missed. For example, I think what they say, any bunny can do a 150 metre shot or 150-yard shot with, 5 bullets. You're bound to get something in the right direction. So I just think I was very saddened when that happened. I think, it's going to slew the race one way or another, so that the normal people won't be getting what the normal people are after. So, yeah.
Yeah, there's a theory, Olivia talked about it earlier on the show. It's called stochastic terrorism. It's where politicians or agitators use words and rhetoric that demonize people. So if you look at the Democrats, you've got Clinton, who talks about Trump supporters being deplorable. You've got Biden, who just a few minutes before Trump took the stage was comparing him to a dictator. You've got articles in the media that compare Trump to a king, to a Caesar, or even comparing with Hitler. And then you've got all these politicians saying we've got to do whatever it takes to stop Trump. That then leads to a nutter thinking, well, I think they want me to shoot him, and then going out and doing it.
Well, what it says to me is if you say that to 350 or 380 million people, in that 380 million people, there's bound to be 500 complete fruitcakes that would take that as a call to arms and let's go and do something. And, the fact that they've actually, you see those white tents where everybody gets their bag searched, they go through X-ray scans, and it's a very party, jolly atmosphere. Even the queue into the venue for a Trump rally is sort of a great party-type atmosphere, and everyone's having a really good time. And what is there? There's 18 roofs around that in Pennsylvania that actually you can find and put someone on or get someone to watch that no sniper gets on there. That, to me, does seem like someone dropped the ball big time here. Now, was that a purposeful dropping of the ball, or was it a accident? I know that when Trump has sort of 3 or 4 rallies a week or 3 or 4 turnouts a week, then there's quite a lot to do to get every venue safe. But again, I think someone's dropped the ball here to allow a roof like that still be able to have access, especially when it's outside the venue. It's only 140, 150 yards away.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. It is a logistical issue to go and inspect all of these places and do all of these things, but that's their job. And there's that saying, one job to do, and that is to stop Trump being shot. Well, it wasn't because of their efforts that Trump wasn't shot. It was pure, you could even say hand of God if you want to. It was pure happenstance that bullet didn't smack into the side of his head and create an awful, awful image in front of all those people in the worldwide audience. It wasn't because the service were brilliant at their job. It just wasn't.
Exactly. I mean, when Clinton came to New Zealand, I was on part of the detail that actually got to weld shut the manholes on the route from the airport into the city because he travelled that way. So what they did was every manhole, by that I mean where the telecommunications is underground, these manholes all the length of the route, and we had to weld them shut. We had to check them and then weld them shut so that they no one could get in there and put some form of explosive in there. And then once that was done, it got checked again that the welds hadn't been tampered with. So there's massive things that go into, and it's in little old New Zealand. When and back in Bill Clinton's time, which is, I don't know, that must be 30 plus years ago that he came to New Zealand, more, 40 years. And so these are the things that happened then, and with things being that much more advanced these days and the political landscape being that much more polarised, I imagine there's all manner of things way above what happened here. And so for that to be leaving a rooftop able to be accessed with a ladder, with a bloke walking up with a ladder, putting it up, climbing up on top with a rifle, I mean, hello, it doesn't strike me as like someone's not doing their job correctly.
Well, exactly. No, I don't think they are doing their job properly. And so I think there needs to be a full inquiry, a full check about what's going on in the Secret Service. There's a whole lot of mistakes there. And, I just can't believe they had these pygmies trying to protect a 6'2" Donald Trump,
Well, a number of them I thought were way bigger than him. But then there was the young lass there that didn't look like she was too much body shield. But I imagine he was wearing a bulletproof vest anyway, so that's why, at least the sniper, what's his name, Crooks, thought he was, so that's why he went for a headshot, I imagine. I mean, I don't know these things. I don't know how these folks think.
Well, I mean,
I imagine that's why he went for a headshot.
Yeah, I think Trump was just side on to him. And if you try and shoot at the centre mass, the body, which is easier to hit, it would have been harder because he was side on. And so also Trump would have been wearing a bulletproof vest and he would have known that, but you can't protect against headshots. Yeah. So he went for a headshot and just happened to turn his head, flipped his ear on the way through. And then everything else we've seen the videos. But what I couldn't believe is just some of those Secret Service people who didn't even know how to hold a gun or even put it back in their holster. That once they pulled it out, it's like they'd only done it for the first time that day. It was quite shocking to see, actually.
Yeah, if you're quite familiar with sidearms and that sort of thing, you would know what the procedure is. I'm not. But I also saw that the snipers that had the tripod and the bipod, they were designed to look not 150 metres away, but more like 1,000 metres away, so that their gear was sort of facing way further out, is my understanding. So that probably wasn't their job. There was other people's job to look at the more close-in areas to make sure that they were being clearly monitored and checked.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a lot to look at. It's certainly been a big week, and I think we're going to see now, Ronald Reagan, when he was shot, and the candidate, he took a 22-point bump in the polls, and I'll be waiting to see what the polls show with Donald Trump after this attempt on his life. But, the guy had incredible presence, acted like a boss, really, stood up, pumped his fist, said, "I'm okay, carry on," you know.
And the picture of him with his fist in the air, pumping his fist and standing up saying, "You didn't get me," I think that's something that will be an image that will be lasting hundreds of years.
Yeah, it's one of those iconic images. You know, everyone talks about Iwo Jima, but that image was staged by necessity because you can't go and take photos like that in the middle of a battle, you know. But it's an iconic photo. But that photo of Trump, you know, just mere seconds after he's been shot, fist in the air, American flag behind him, blood on his face, it's unforgettable. And it will be. All right, Paul.
Very good.
Well, thanks for calling in, and we'll talk next week.
Okay, take care. Bye for now.
Welcome to Cam's Buddies, Jack. Good to have you back.
G'day, Cam. Thank you.
I'll be interested
Nice to
in
hear
your
you, boy.
take. I'd be interested in your take on the attempted Trump assassination.
Well, straight away, I'd be worried the protection detail must be so embarrassed, or was it a setup? Did they want it to happen? Because, I mean, why didn't they have drones up there looking out for any potential threats?
Or a
That would be, if I was running the protection detail, I'd be having drones all over the place looking for potential threats, and I'd have undercover feds everywhere.
Well, I don't know why they didn't have someone on the water tower who, you know, that was somewhat further back. And yes, you wouldn't have been able to see the stage from the water tower, but you certainly would have been able to see the top of all those buildings. I mean, you know, if you're in the military, if you're in this sort of a job to protect people, you always go for the high ground. And it seemed that they didn't really have anyone other than the two guys on top of the building behind Trump who were on the high ground who could actually have oversight of all of those buildings around it. This is just standard sort of stuff. You would have thought professionals like the Secret Service would have had that covered.
Well, I would have thought so. But that's what makes me sort of join your cult as a conspiracy theorist. I think the CIA job, they wanted it to happen. Unfortunately, they picked a guy who couldn't shoot.
Well, I don't know.
Now, tell me, you're a gun expert,
Yeah.
right? Tell me this. An AR-15, which is purported to be the rifle used, if one of those things hits you on the ear, I would have imagined it would have taken your whole ear off.
Well, it depends on where it hit, right? A 223, which I presume it was a 223 or a 5.56 caliber round.
Yes.
It does about 2350 feet per second at the end of the barrel. It wouldn't have dropped by that much at 140 yards. It would maybe have dropped to about 2,100 feet per second. Depends on what sort of ammunition he used, but an ear is pretty flimsy. If it just nicked your ear, you'd know about it. You'd feel it. You would have heard it. You would have heard the bullets coming at you. And you know, I have been shot at and been underneath bullets that have flown over my head. You do hear it. It's very.
I've done that training too.
Yeah, you do hear those bullets. You don't hear the shot, but you hear the bullets coming at you. And
yes, you do.
You could see that Trump flinched. He reacted. So it wouldn't take your ear right off. It wouldn't if it was just a neck. And it's just happenstance that he turned his head the way that he did. If he had kept his head still a little bit longer in the other position, then we would have seen a spectacular headshot, which would have been absolutely appalling to witness. But that's what would have happened.
The poor guy standing behind him.
But it was actually in between the location of the guy who was killed was actually in between the shooter and Trump. And so it's hard to know which bullet killed him, but he was shot in the head and probably in the back of the head. So when you have a look at the bleachers and everything, the guy who was killed was off to Trump's right. And in between the children there. So it's terribly tragic and terribly sad, but I don't subscribe to the CIA doing it because, they would have actually made sure that Trump didn't get up again.
They would have picked a better shot. Apparently this guy joined a gun club and they told him, look, he's wasting his time. He couldn't shoot a barn door 30 paces.
Yeah, see, I'm not sure I believe that because even if you're using open sights, even if you're using open sights, then it's pretty hard to shoot across 7 bays, which is what the claim is. But it's also very easy to teach someone how to use a telescopic sight on a rifle. I've taken people who have never used a rifle before, and I've gone and put an egg on a post at 100 meters, and I said, right, you're going to shoot the egg off the post. And they're going, oh, no, I can't believe that I'm going to be able to do that. And 5 or 6 shots later, they've shot the egg off the post. So the firearm can do it. It's the nut behind the gun that is the actual problem. But clearly he got a bullet in the vicinity of Donald Trump. So he can't have been...
Yeah, he didn't miss by much.
Yeah, unless he was aiming at somebody else on another building, 200 meters the other way.
Yeah. But why aim for the head?
Well,
he wasn't militarily trained.
Well, I'll tell you why he aims for the head, because if you have a look at it, I mean, there's a map and a diagram. I've looked all of this up. Where he fired from and where Trump was standing would mean that Trump was side on to him. So if he was shooting at the torso, he would have had to have gone through his arm, and a small bullet like a .223 would have deflected off a bone. There's a lot of ribs in the way there when you're shooting people from the side. It's a long way from the right-hand side to get to the heart. It's got to go a long way to get through a body. And the head is the easiest and most vulnerable target right there. And at 140 yards in a telescopic sight, it's an easy shot. So that's why he did it. Oh, and Trump would have been wearing a bulletproof vest as well.
Oh, okay.
So you can't wear a bulletproof vest on your head, obviously.
You can't.
Yeah. So that'll be the situation there.
Maybe that orange makeup was a bulletproof vest for the face.
Could have. Might have assisted him. Might have given that extra layer, which meant it was only a nick on the ear rather than an ear piercing.
Yeah. Who would know?
All right, Jack. Thank you for your comments, and we'll talk again next week.
See you, Cam. Bye.
It's always interesting to see what the person on the street thinks, and that's why I have Cam's Buddies, and today was no different. Tell us your thoughts on Cam's Buddies by emailing inbox@realitycheck.radio or text to 2057.
You've heard the words open, fair, both sides of the story. It's easy to say them, but practicing them often seems like a bridge too far. New Zealand, it's time for a reality check. Reality check. RCR, Reality Check Radio. Rational discussion, common sense, and open debate for real. With me, Paul Brennan.
You just can't make this stuff up. You couldn't write the script.
Veteran broadcaster Peter Williams.
Where is the evidence they actually make a difference? It turns out that was a very fair question to ask.
Taking on the mainstream, Chantel Baker.
Mainstream media, as usual, in their little perch.
The man who cares so much and whose background is for real, Rodney Hyde.
The doctors don't believe them. They can't get ACC. They can't work. They're told it's all in their head.
Along with a raft of contributors to inform, entertain, and bring the truth back to New Zealand media. It's time for a reality check, all right. RCR, Reality Check Radio at www.realitycheck.radio. We've arrived.
Our text machine is now live. Send us your thoughts by texting your message to 2057. That's 2057. So get in touch with us now.
And now it's time for the whale bag. We had some general feedback from Facebook. Trevor says, is Cam going to try and jam his thoughts on COVID into everything this time? Or do you think we will have the same old more? Well, funny, Trevor, I didn't mention COVID once in last week's show. Now, political commentator Matt McCartan returned to the Crunch to discuss what is happening in politics on the global front and what happens in the back rooms of politics. Paul writes and says, "Hi, Cameron, I love your knowledge on politics and liked your talk with Matt. It is good that two people from other sides can debate politics. One argument that needs to be countered immediately is when people say, if it wasn't for the COVID shots, thousands would have died, or the shots saved thousands. Well, my answer to that is they should never have had a chance, because all early treatments should have been explored and used. Millions would have been saved and continue to be saved. Our economy would have been saved, as we would have been taking prophylaxis and early treatments at a very low cost. So please, we all need to shut down the shots were the saviour argument. Keep the good work coming. And that's from Paul. I've got an anonymous comment here that says, Cam, Winston may want to see Ardern, Hipkins and Robertson facing treason charges après the COVID inquiry. And Grant says, I saw the photos of Luxon prancing around the White House, and it reminded me of that old cartoon character Jiminy Cricket. I'm sure you know what an insect lacks skeleton-wise. Cam's buddies were called in to share their thoughts on what's happening with the Green Party and the latest revelations in the Darlene Tana saga. And I've got a correction here from Wikipedia, so it must be true. In late November 2023, Tana assumed the Green Party's Oceans and Fisheries, Science, Innovation and Technology, Small Business and Manufacturing, Media and Communications, Digitising Government and Internal Affairs, Overseas New Zealand spokesperson portfolios. Another anonymous comment says, Cam, is there a good way? Here is a good way to describe the Green Party. They think they are champagne in a tall glass, but in actual fact, they are lukewarm piss in a plastic cup. I know you can't say that on air. I just did. But I do love that saying and thought it suits them. Keep up the great work. I love Cam's buddies. Heidi on Facebook said, love your buddies. They're always refreshing. And on Nathan Smith, who's a freelance writer, he dialed in to share his experience of being cancelled by the New Zealand Initiative and the problems with New Zealand media and how to change policy agendas. Trevor, the guy who commented about COVID, was on Facebook, and he says, I would encourage RCR listeners to do some research on Mr. Smith. Here, he's definitely deflecting and minimising the contents of his blog. Outright racism and sexual violence are never acceptable. And Trevor, again, you're wrong, because context is important. I've known Nathan for a long time, and I stand by having him as a guest, and I stand by having him right on my website. Bryce comments and says, great interview. Cam's been having some quality guests. And we've got Leonie sent in a message about Ukraine and Gaza and some YouTube videos about apparently there's two 30-minute interviews with Judge Napolitano, a.k.a. Jeffrey Sachs, regarding Ukraine and Gaza. This judge is onto it. Worth going through all the episodes, but these two are a standout for you to know. I'm particularly referring to their conversation on Gaza. And she provides me with two links for that. And that's the whale bag for this week.
Loving what you're hearing? Well, the establishment hates it. And right now, they're conjuring up new ways to try and censor RCR. To ensure you never miss a beat of the hard-hitting news you've come to know and love, make sure you're on the RCR mailing list. Get connected now at realitycheck.radio/email.
That's it for the Crunch this week. It's been a massive week in world politics. The attempted assassination of Donald Trump and his boss moves immediately after the attempt shows that he has the goods to win bigly come November. David Farrar thinks so, and so does Olivia Pierson. It was a momentous event, and the Biden campaign must now reset, especially after Biden's appalling debate and his poor showing at the NATO conference stand-up. Biden's attack lines have been neutered by the attempted assassination. Whilst that's important, it's also important that we need to look after our mental health. It's not just some excuse pathetic politicians trot out when they've been caught behaving badly. It's serious. And that's why we must talk openly and honestly about it rather than use it as an excuse like the politicians do. They do everyone a disservice with their excuses. I implore you, talk to your mates. Just do it. And this is why it is that Reality Check Radio exists. so we can share these interesting characters, these important topics, these difficult discussions, and not shy away from them. Now, you can keep up with all my shows and all of the shows on RCR by using the RCR app, and you can even use that app to stream live. And a big thanks for the team that helps put together the show and make it all work. It's been a real pleasure having you all back this week, and I'm loving your feedback and really enjoying talking to so many people, sharing their thoughts on politics, life, and everything in between. So a big shout out to all of you. Thank you for listening and having faith in me as we continue to explore this beautiful game of politics. Don't forget, email suggestions to inbox@realitycheck.radio for people for me to interview. And let's make this show the best political show in New Zealand. Stay tuned for a repeat of Rodney Hyde's Real Talk coming up next, followed by a replay of Truth Speaker